Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 942 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a Sunday fundraiser night, the best night of the week, and also a Russian nuke missile test failed today in spectacular fashion, the fourth time in a row, and it's spectacular news. And it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. As we've seen today, record losses being taken inside of the front lines around Ukraine by Russian armed forces. And not only that, probably one of the most embarrassing things to happen for the Russian Federation, as one of their brand new Sarmat nuclear missiles blew up in a test today. Really quickly, to make sure that people understand this, the title does not say nuke explodes, it says nuke missile explodes. This is a missile specifically designed and built to carry a nuclear warhead. There was no nuclear warhead on board. The nuke missile exploded, not the actual nuke that the nuke missile carries. But nevertheless, the RS-28 Sarmat did blow up at the actual pad, destroying the entire facility and leaving a crater that was largely visible from space. It was a pretty impressive explosion, once again showing that even the most modern and advanced Russian efforts to try and create a usable, potent, and deadly nuclear weapon is not that attainable, and also the maintenance on these weapons is pretty bad. We'll be getting into that a little bit later on tonight, well, actually right towards the start. And at the exact same time, we were also able to get additional information and satellite footage from the area around the Otrobrisky ammunition depot, once again showing that there has been a lot of damage in this area, and it appears that there is a long-lasting ammunition loss that is going to be happening in that direction. We also were able to hear of the Israelis going to once again eyeball an offensive action in into southern Lebanon, claiming that they may even be trying to create some sort of a buffer zone in between them and Hezbollah forces by taking control of an area leading up to the Litani River, as of course laid out by United Nations resolution. That is the area that Hezbollah can operate in within Lebanon. We have also been able to hear major news from inside of Ukraine itself, as the Ukrainian armed forces have been making such progress in Kursk and have been inflicting such high losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces in this area. We are finally starting to see an incredibly rare usage of Russian aviation within this direction, as the Russians try and pummel the Ukrainians with the largest glide bombs they can find, and hopefully try and slow down their offensive, which so far has a pretty decent amount of momentum on the southern end of the Reka Sim. Meanwhile, all the way down in the area of Pokrovsk, we've seen that Ukrainian forces have been hard at work today, hammering Russian forces inside the area around the city of Pokrovsk, and also around the Chasiv Yar area as well, largely stopping the Russian advance as it stands today, and inflicting the highest casualty report that we have seen in an incredibly long time. We have absolutely loads to report on tonight, an insanely high amount, and it is a very interesting night. And so we're actually going to be moving y'all into the first bit of major news that we have. But before we do, one quick little shout out that I have to make. It is the Sunday night fundraiser. We have already hit pretty much $1,000 out of the $3,000 goal for...
Hey, let's go, baby!
Hey, let's go, baby!
Let's go!
And we hit it for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. So if you would like to help out with saving soldiers' lives in Ukraine, please make sure to donate to this fundraiser. 100% of all of your donations do end up going to Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, and it is a massive help, saving the lives of soldiers that have given a lot, sometimes lost limbs, sometimes have even taken critical damage to their torso or even their head in some instances. And Revive Soldiers of Ukraine helps them to have another chance, a second win for the large part. But moving on from that, and out of the area of Ukraine, it's time for us to move all the way up into the Arkhangelsk Oblast of the Russian Federation, near to the area of the just region west of Arkhangelsk. This is where there is a decent Russian launching and test site for Russian missiles and Russian rocketry programs. One of the new kinds of missiles and weapons that the Russians have been producing and just put into service very recently was the RS-28 Sarmat, also called the Satan II, which is a bit of a colloquial name. It's not actually the name that the missile has. The missile is actually called the Sarmat, and the NATO reporting name is SSX-29 or SSX-30. So it's more so like a coined media name that's called the Satan II, largely carrying on with the original Satan I ICBM that the Soviet Union produced. But nevertheless, the RS-28 is brand spanking new. It was introduced into service just around this time last year, meaning that this nuclear weapon, at least in terms of field service, is only roughly about a year old. It's not that old of a missile. These things are incredibly new. It is supposed to be the shining brilliance, the grandeur of the Russian armed forces in full form, a defensive shield and a sword to be used by the Russian government and Putin's regime to be able to make sure that Western countries or any countries that go against Russia's interests will cower in fear at the fact that this missile can strike practically anywhere in the world and be pretty much undetectable until it hits its target. The Sarmat is the only missile in the world right now that exists that can actually be launched from Russia, and instead of flying over the North Pole, which is the quickest and easiest way to get to the United States, it actually flies the long way around. It actually ends up flying all the way around the world through the South Pole and then up into the United States from the southern side of the country. The United States does not have a nuclear defense or nuclear detection system or sensor relay that faces towards the South Pole. This means that in theory, the Russians will have a first strike capability by using the Sarmat to be able to strike the United States with an ICBM that has a MIRV warhead, meaning that it's carrying multiple warheads on that one single missile, and be able to deal a crippling blow to the United States before we even know what's actually happening. Something that is fairly scary, at least on paper. But what isn't really scary is that this is one of the few times we've ever seen them test the Sarmat. They tested it once, and I actually have the Wikipedia article right here with a whole load of information about the Sarmat missiles and their production history and their very limited service. But still, it is something else to note, and I'll show y'all really quickly the one video we have of a successful Sarmat launch, which is right here. So here's this clip. That right there is the Sarmat. Just to give you an idea of the size of this thing, these things are huge, and they are designed to be able to carry some of the larger multiple independent reentry vehicle platforms, otherwise known as a MIRV, which carries multiple nuclear warheads on a single missile, meaning that the single missile can engage and destroy dozens of targets at a single time. But nevertheless, here's a actual successful launch, the only one actually that we've seen so far of the Sarmat.
Yeah. Their only successful test. It looks like it's got some good power behind it, though.
Oh yeah, this thing's got power behind it. And here's another angle of the test. But as y'all can see, not to get y'all the whole clip of this thing, this has some pretty advanced rocketry involved to be able to get this thing to even exit the silo and then take off and fly away. It's actually a really technologically complex sort of a system. And also, it is the most advanced system, at least in terms of capability on paper, in the world. But the problem with that is that it's only on paper, because the Sarmat missile itself, not talking about the MIRV system that would be put on into the nose cone of this missile, the actual weapon, the missile itself, the Sarmat here, it's running into a large amount of problems. And while this one test launch, literally the only test launch it's had that's been successful, it's not really having that successful of a test life, which is really the only way that nuclear weapons exist, is through multiple tests, showing that the missile is actually effective at doing what its only job in its entire existence would be, which is flying from point A to point B and then delivering its payload onto enemy targets. The Sarmat just can't do it. And we saw that just about 18 hours ago, a Sarmat missile was scheduled for a test. They attempted a launch, and the entire Sarmat critically exploded before it even left the silo. It destroyed the entire silo, it destroyed the entire compound it was in, and once again, it is showing us that the Sarmat is a complete failure as far as its actual efficiency ratings go. There have been 5 tests of the Sarmat missile. More so test launches, if we want to call it that. Because once again, I have to put this out there. The actual thing that matters with these nuclear weapons is not the nuclear warheads, because the nuclear warheads are largely guaranteed to work most of the time. They usually have about a 90% efficiency rate of exploding. There really isn't such a thing as a dud most times with a nuclear warhead, because the maintenance is usually somewhat high on them, and especially considering that these are brand new, the dud rate of a nuclear warhead on a Sarmat would be slim to none. So really the only point of failure for this weapon system is the actual missile itself that's carrying these warheads to the United States or to any other country around the world. And we saw this thing blew the hell up. I'll show y'all here what we got from Radio Free Europe. This is the site of the launch before the launch occurred. You can actually see the launch pad or silo right over here where the missile was going to be launched. And this is what it looked like today.
Wow, man, that fuel scorched the whole area. It looks like it didn't really scorch the trees, though. It just got the grass.
Yeah, crazily enough, it literally burned the entire pad, but it didn't burn like any of the forest or anything. But the crater is absolutely massive. It looks like it enveloped one of the side buildings right over here. You can see that right there. It also destroyed a couple of the sensor towers, if those are sensor towers, or have something to do with relaying information to the launch site. It appears that most of those were destroyed. The entire facility was laid to waste by this missile exploding inside the silo.
And never mind on the no scorched trees. I see it got the side of the river or something over there. A fragment must have fallen down over there.
Oh, yeah, it did, didn't it? I didn't even realize that. Yeah, look at that. I thought those were clouds for a second, but no, that's actually smoke coming from the burning forests out there. That is crazy.
I wonder if that means the missile was actually able to get some height before it actually blew back up and fell back on the landing pad, because that indicates that maybe something was able to fall down over there on that spot and catch it on fire.
Maybe so, or maybe it blew up in the pad, a whole bunch of burning debris went flying up into the air, and then the prevailing winds just took it eastwards and towards this little lake, and that's why it caught on fire. It could have been one or the other.
It could have been it, maybe. Either way you go, that was a long distance to go to like catch that little edge of the riverbed like right on fire over there. That's a big deal. Also, it looks like there's many fires around that one spot where it landed. There's the whole entire forest over there smoking as well.
Yeah, it looks as though, well, I would say, honestly, looking at the close-ups, like here, This crater appears that the missile actually blew up while still in the silo. Maybe part of it had exited by this point of the launch, but it looks like it may have exploded as soon as the launch procedure was initiated and it was actually being jettisoned out of the silo. It looks like it may have exploded at that point. And if that is the case, that means this thing had a critical failure, leading to the loss of the entire vehicle, for the large part, as soon as it was launched. I mean, literally, almost instantaneously, the missile was getting flung out of the silo, and just maybe a few feet off of its actual resting place, the whole thing blew up in the silo, and then sent debris flying everywhere, which caught the local forests on fire to the east of the facility. But one cannot understate how big of a thing this is, because, like I was saying a second ago, they have tested the Sarmat 5 times. This is now the 5th time. Out of all 5 of these tests, only one of them has succeeded, and that was the first launch they ever made of the system back in 2023. Every single test launch of this weapon system from that point has been a catastrophic failure at different points of flight. And this is actually the earliest that we've ever seen a failure occur. Usually the failures occur about several hundred feet above the pad, or usually about a couple of thousand feet up, and then they have to end up controlled detonating the missile because it starts to go errant, meaning that it's going off course, and that could start to produce some incredibly dangerous results if so. But this is the first time that we've ever seen one blow up in the silo and destroy the entire complex that it was at. This is actually pretty shocking, and it's starting to show that the Russians are actually regressing as far as the capabilities of the RS-28 exists. It seems as though as the production cycle continues, the quality control of these missiles is in fact getting even worse, and meaning that probably all RS-28 Sarmats are woefully ineffective at actually completing their mission of being launched and actually delivering their nuclear payloads over the United States of America. This means...
And also, what a terrible time for this to happen, too, like another failed test, considering that Putin just got done, like, lobbing some more nuclear threats. This was the worst time for it to fail. But, you know, they have a history of failure at this point. Like you said, 5 test launches and 4 of them unsuccessful. And that one successful one that we saw in the video right there, that's their only ones. They're only successful 1 out of 5 times, which is not a good track record whatsoever. But considering the fact that Russia really can't mount a conventional response if they wanted to attack NATO, and now their nuclear weapons are proven to be ineffective every time they test them, it seems like Russia sounds a little bit defenseless at this point, based on what we're seeing.
It really does, actually. It's like the worst time for them to do this. And also, when this happened today, just about hours later, we actually heard that apparently, according to the Washington Post and according to sources in the Russian government and the American government, the Russian government and Putin are starting to realize that the constant nuclear threats from coming from Russia have largely appeared to be ineffective. So they said that Putin is now going to be going for a more elegant and laid-back approach to trying to warn the West not to do things. And I think that they started to revisit that idea because the only weapon in the entire Russian arsenal that actually gave them a massive upper hand advantage in a first strike scenario, which is the Sarmat, it continuously is failing. There's not a single one beyond the first test that has succeeded. And I want to show y'all something else here about the scale of this explosion. That right there is the lid or the cap of the silo. That little green door right there, that's the one that actually shuts and keeps the missile inside. You can also see right next to that a couple of KAMAZ supply trucks right here, and over here, to really give you all the best idea of scale, in the bottom right corner where my mouse cursor is, that is a Ural 4320 supply truck. Now, I need y'all to get that in y'all's minds, because this is a very good point of reference. It gives us kind of an idea of a scale. So let me tell y'all really quickly, and let me go pull this up, a Ural 4320, and let me tell y'all how big that thing is in length, so that way you can get an idea of how far away the zoom is on the satellite picture. Let's see here. A Ural 4320 is 290 inches long. And if we were to take that and we were to cut that down into feet, so we'll do 290 divided by 12. That means that a Ural 4320 is roughly 24.5 feet long, approximately. So it is a fairly long vehicle. It's actually, you know, kind of a large one, especially on the military end. This is a very big supply truck. Now, let's move on, once again, keeping that in mind, that this is the scale of about 25 feet down here in the bottom right corner. That's how big 25 feet in length is. Now let's go back and look at the next picture where we can see the crater from the explosion of the Sarmat. It is probably about 150 to 200 feet wide in different places, and it looks to be maybe 150 to 250 feet deep. It completely blew away pretty much every single part of the facility. The only thing that appears to have partially existed is the building in the launch pad over here to the right. It seems as though that building was halfway destroyed, but you can also see that only one tower continues to stand at the complex. Pretty much all the rest of them have been destroyed. It seems as though the entire facility, this entire test site, ended up getting nuked, almost literally, by the Sarmat exploding inside the silo. This is a huge explosion. This was a critical failure, a catastrophic failure. You don't really see these often, especially in the nuclear weapons or rocketry department, and especially considering that technically the Sarmat is in service right now. You will see a lot of explosions of rockets if you ever look into kind of like the rocketry world. Explosions are actually really common. Like when a lot of people watch SpaceX tests of the Dragon 9 or the Falcon or the Falcon Heavy, or better yet, the Starship, you'll see a lot of explosions along the way. That's actually largely normal, especially in the testing and research phase of developing a rocket system, because usually you have to learn, and on top of that, it's not really good to leave a rocket wildly flying around where it could land on something and explode on the ground, so usually there's a lot of remote detonations and things like that involved in testing. But once something goes alive as an actual usable system, they're not supposed to blow up. Like, since testing, there has not been many Falcon 9s that have blown up, and of course none of the crewed ones have ever blown up, and neither has a Falcon Heavy or the Starship, because the Starship hasn't even gotten out of the testing and research phase. So once again, this is pretty shocking because it's not in the research and testing phase any longer. The Sarmat is technically in full service in the Russian nuclear forces, and it's continuing to go through failure after failure. So far, it has about a 17% success rate of actually launching successfully, which is abysmal. That means that out of every single Sarmat that the Russians have, for every 6 or so that are launched, only one of them is actually going to succeed in making its way to its target. That is a critical loss for the Russians and a massive embarrassment as far as their strategic standing. But Matthew, what were you going to say?
Also, by the way, your theory is that the ICBM blew up inside the silo. That's your theory, correct?
Largely, yeah.
So I was looking at the image here, and I was thinking, like, surely with that amount of fuel, because I'm sure the Sarmat carries a phenomenal amount of fuel to try to get to its location. This thing right here did not create a big enough crater. So I'm assuming the silo was lined with, like, really thick concrete. Am I correct?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it must have blown up in the silo because for the hole not to be larger where it exploded, that concrete must have contained most of that energy and sent it down and also up. So that may explain also why the debris might have fired out of the tube and also landed maybe over there where the trees were inside the forest and caught it on fire. I think your theory was accurate about blowing up in the silo.
I think it is because just look at the depth of that thing. It doesn't really have the kind of width or really kind of like the fireball sort of a component to show that this explosion happened above the pad. Because if you look at this, it clearly looks like something blew up pretty much in the ground because it was a pretty substantial crater made from it, and it's incredibly deep. It looks like it's as deep as the actual silo that was there.
Yeah, I think so. I wonder how deep this was. Like, it must have dug down deep or compacted the ground below it, if that's even possible. Or otherwise, it just fired it all out like a gun, basically, and all the debris came flying out.
Man, you know that must have been a sight if this thing actually just blew up in the silo and it really didn't make it out. This thing literally just looked like a giant firework cannon or something like that, just shooting a giant load of solid propellant into the sky and then everywhere else around the facility. But still,
yeah, if it happened like that and it was basically like a explosive charge like in a gun or something like that, it must have fired some of that debris much farther out than even we know about at this point. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear later that maybe debris landed on like neighboring towns, like a decent ways away from here, because that would have fired the stuff out with some significant force.
Probably so, but nevertheless, this was a really interesting and once again bombshell, no pun intended, development that happened today, because this Sarmat launch was actually kind of a big deal because the first one succeeded, the last 3 failed. This was the 5th launch. This was going to let us know if the failures of the Sarmats were just early teething issues or if this is going to be pretty much a quality control issue overall. And now with a fourth failed launch consecutively, we're getting the idea that there's actually major quality control issues that are going on in the production of the Sarmats, meaning that these are pretty much strategically unviable for the Russians, and once again leveling the nuclear playing field in between the United States and the Russian Federation in actual practice, not in theory, but in practice. So this is huge news, and once again, it's leading a lot of people to talk about the Russian nuclear standing, and also considering that Putin started to openly back off of the whole nuclear threat thing publicly, literally hours after this happened, it's seeming to show that the Russians are starting to realize that they don't have this kind of a magic sword that they can use against the West with the nuclear threats anymore that may actually be viable. They're pretty much on the same playing field that they were back in the late 90s with the United States, where both sides are pretty much capable of the same kind of nuclear devastation and the same kind of attacks that the other is. And it looks like a lot of people are starting to put in their thoughts that Russia is very limited in their nuclear ability. Some people are saying that Russia isn't even capable of a nuclear attack at all, at least in a strategic form. Some people are saying that it may be just as teething issues, although these teething issues are rarely seen. Maybe it's just the Russian way of doing things, and the teething issues will eventually be sorted out. And others are a little bit unsure and undecided. But still, what are people thinking, Matthew, about this? And what are you thinking as well? Do you think that this is like just pretty much a limited nuclear ability, no nuclear ability at all? And what is everyone else thinking as well?
All right, so after we did witness today the fourth unsuccessful test of the Sarmat ICBM nuclear missile, it was not armed with a warhead, gotta make that clear. It was just the rocket and fuel, and it did blow up, obviously, and it looks like in the silo, based on our assumption. But what are your thoughts? 40% said Russia is limited in nuke ability as a result of these failures, while 25% said it's only the new missile issues, and that's simply it, while 23% said Russia is not capable of a nuclear attack. Now, on this one, I gotta say that we can't rule out the likelihood that Russia some sort of nuclear attack. It may not be as large as maybe like on paper indicates, but it would be a nuclear attack of some sort. And remember, all it takes is one nuclear weapon to cause some severe devastation. So even though, like, for example, even if 80% of their nukes did not work, if 20% did work, that's still horrific, even in that capacity. So I would actually be with the 39%. Russia can probably launch some limited nuke attack, but, you know, it's not going to be like 100% of their arsenal is going to work. I think a large portion of their arsenal is probably not being maintained properly, and also maybe they don't have the expertise or something. Something is causing these failures to happen back to back, and they're not able to fix it. And these are public failures. It's not like they're able to hide it or keep it secret. It's right here in the open for us to see, and we're witnessing it 4 times in a row now. So that's very embarrassing for Putin, and it makes his country look basically defenseless because he was relying on the nuclear threat to be able to create deterrence to ward off the NATO threat toward Russia. So right now he's got his hands tied behind his back and really no way out of it. So I'm with the 39%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, the Russians are going to be capable of conducting a very limited nuclear attack, or they may not really be able to conduct a nuclear attack at all. We're looking at the Sarmat right now, and I got to make this very clear. This missile system is brand new. It's only been in service for less than a year, or roughly about a year at this very point that we're talking about it right now. And we're seeing that the efficiency or the success rate, or the dud rate more so, of this missile is around 82%. Somewhere around there, 83%. Out of all of the missiles they fire, only 17% of them are actually going to be successfully launched and make their way to the United States. That is with a weapon system that is literally brand new. So it's all design flaws that are leading to these explosions endlessly happening over and over and over, because it can't be maintenance failures, because these things are so young in their lifespan, there really is no maintenance that's needed to be done on them. So anything that's exploding, it's completely a design failure or a production failure in the design and manufacturing process. Now, this leads us to another interesting point. The Soviet Union was the one that produced pretty much all of the nuclear weapons that the Russian Federation has today. Those nuclear weapons, at a minimum, are at least 30 years old, or even older than that. Most of them are probably going to be around 40 or 50 years old. These weapon systems have been around for an incredibly long time, and maintaining a nuclear arsenal like that at full readiness is extremely expensive. The amount of maintenance that goes into nuclear weapon systems, the actual missiles, the bombs, the silos, the operating centers, the communication lines, everything in between is exorbitantly expensive. The United States takes up a large amount of that expense, operating about the 6,500 to 7,000 nuclear weapons that we have in our arsenal of all types. The Russians have about a similar number. They have somewhere around 7,000 to 8,000 nuclear weapons on paper. And the fact that the Russian government has been dealing with extremely major budgeting issues since the creation of the Federation back in 1991, they had to massively downscale the Russian armed forces from about 1.2 million strong to about 600,000 strong post-Soviet Union. They also had to figure out how in the world to try and modernize old equipment, and most of the times they can't even do that because they don't have the money to be able to modernize a lot of their equipment, or they simply just don't have the money to even build new equipment at all. And if they do, it's in incredibly small numbers. Going off of all of that, and looking at the picture of their conventional armed forces, it's very clear that the Russians don't really have the funding to be able to give the 100% kind of maintenance that would be needed to be able to keep weapon systems running. And the older a weapon system gets, the less likely it is to function properly. That is the case with everything. That's why a lot of people are maybe a little bit keen, and they're noticing that the United States isn't giving our latest and greatest tech to Ukraine. It's usually about 30 or 40 years old. And that's because those weapon systems are starting to reach the point that even with 100% maintenance, the age of the systems and the complicated parts that are inside of them that may not be accessible easily to repair are beginning to wear out. And so we want to get rid of them and replace them with new stuff that, while being maintained, it still will have a much higher chance of working almost all the time. So then we give that stuff to Ukraine. The Russians, on the other hand, are sitting around with 50-year-old weapon systems. They're hardly maintaining them, most likely, or not maintaining them at all. And that leads us to believe, and of course, once again, I got to put this out there, the Soviet Union wasn't really known for producing the most efficient or effective systems in the world. Most of the time, they end up having a pretty high dud rate, or things are designed or produced with really no know-how whatsoever, and so they end up coming out really shoddy. So we would assume that already the Russian nuclear readiness back in the day when a lot of the Soviet nuclear systems were being made was probably, well, my esophagus collapses right there, wonderful stuff, but it was
that esophagus, I'm telling you.
but it was probably pretty low, probably maybe around 50 or 60%. But as 50 years has passed and a lot of these systems aren't being maintained, they're probably completely ineffective. They're probably not even going to launch. Because if we're seeing a brand new weapon system only has a 17% success rate, imagine how little of a success rate a 50-year-old unmaintained nuclear missile and its nuclear bombs on board are going to be. It's going to be wildly low. So I would say that I would be hovering in between. They're either completely limited to smaller strikes, or they're completely relegated to really no strikes at all. And if they were able to fire off any weapons, most of them would fail at the launch. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, on what we're seeing right now, and also using a lot of logic to try and extrapolate a good assumption about what the Russian nuclear forces will look like at this point, and their force readiness will be, because it can't really be that good. It's got to be horrendous at this point, and the Sarmat is certainly proving that that has to be the case. But with that,
I wonder what Russia's going to do now about this, because I'm sure that with this being the fourth failure in a row on the Sarmat, this has to be raising some big concerns with the Russian government, because, like I said, that is their fallback. The nuclear threat is their only deterrence that they have for their country. So I wonder if that's going to force the Russian government to look into alternative options for like WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, like maybe more like potent chemical weapons or something like that that they can use to try to basically replace their nuclear like deterrence threat with a different threat. Like in case the nukes fail, well, we have something else over here that's equally deadly.
maybe so, but I don't think the Russians are even going to be competent enough to do anything like that. They seem to be, no joke, woefully incompetent on almost every degree. So I don't even think they'll be able to do something like that.
Maybe not. I wonder though, because if I was running a country and the nukes were failing like that, I would be trying to come up with some alternative pretty quick, or I'd either be trying to source nuclear parts or weapons from other countries, like for example China or even North Korea, because North Korea actually has functioning nukes, which is an interesting thought to think about, because in Russia being the country it is, you would think that they would have functioning nukes and North Korea wouldn't, but it's the other way around, which is really weird. So I don't know. And also, do you recall that Russia, Putin specifically, was going to trade some munitions from North Korea for nuclear weapons technology to give to North Korea? That was a bad trade because like North Korea, Russia can't get their stuff together when it comes to their nukes, but North Korea can. So I don't know if that was a fair trade.
I don't think it was a fair trade, man. Probably the North Koreans scoffed at the tech they were given. They were like, "Ugh, we already figured this out, like you idiots," like something like that. But with that,
And then North Korea screwed them good too by giving them dud weapons that blow up and stuff like that, and they're like Mickey Mouse weapons.
man, I'm telling you what, man. It was, dude, that was the perfect trade all around. Conmen working with conmen to give each other garbage. It was literally the Russian trade of all Russian trades. But with that, we are going to be moving on into our next bit of news, where we were able to hear of some more interesting stuff happening in Russia, specifically around the area of Toropets and the Ostrobrisky ammunition depot storage site. We were able to get a little bit satellite footage and pictures today showing us the damage that was caused to this facility. This is how it appeared around the 16th of November in 2022, and this is how it appeared today. As we could see, the entire facility was leveled. Most buildings are gone. Some of them appear to be reduced to the foundations. One or two of them on the western side actually ended up surviving the explosion, but for the large part, the entire ammunition depot did go up in flames and was pretty much completely destroyed. Wonderful news, and we love to see it. I just can't say that enough. This is the kind of damage that we have been looking for to Russian ammunition, and once again, this is going to be leading to the Russians, in total, losing about 18% of all of their ammunition inside of Western Russia in a very short span of about 72 hours. Shocking, really, to think about, but still, the Ukrainians were very effective in these attacks. Moving on from that, we also got to see over in the area of Kaliningrad, something very interesting. Now, Kaliningrad actually does border Lithuania and Poland, and near the Lithuanian border is the town of Sovetsk, which has a bridge that crosses into Lithuania, and the Lithuanian border checkpoint right there. The Lithuanians have decided to start showing their displeasure at the Russians as tensions have started to rise because they hung the Ukrainian flag up on the bridge, so the Russians responded, and we can see the Ukrainian flag flying right there. So the Russians respond on their side of the bridge. With a big Z. And the flags of the Wagner. I don't know if this is Russian government approved. I have a feeling it's not, because the Wagner isn't really in good graces with the Russian government any longer. But they did put up a flag of the VDV, Sprokom Proget, on Pereshuta, Belly Buket. And so I guess it maybe counts a little. Oh, really scared. They put up the flag of a whole bunch of losers. But still, the only thing that is last behind the letter Z in the Latin alphabet is the Russian Federation itself, because they just blow at it. Like they suck at everything, and it's incredibly horrendous. Yeah, they suck more than Chris's mom or a Dyson vacuum cleaner, I'll tell you that. They are horrendous. But moving on out of Kaliningrad and on down into the area of Crimea, we were also able to hear of a little bit of interesting news down here. The Russians are apparently picking up a lesson from Geschlick Balakman in the Deutschen Boat, because they're starting to build flak towers like all over the place, and they're starting to build them now around the Kerch Bridge as well. We got to see it right there. Like, there's a flak tower right there with a pantsir on top of it.
You know, it's got to be wild as a Russian citizen driving by and seeing a flat tower like right next to your bridge over there. That's got to inspire confidence that the AD works well at building flat towers.
Man, I'm telling you, man. It's like, I don't know if the air defense, if I was a Russian citizen, I saw that, I'd be like, oh yeah, we are screwed, man. Like, we were having to build freaking towers. This is pretty bad. And once again, here's a zoomed up picture of it. And then they had a picture of a pantsir right there. But yeah, this is not a good look when you have to start building flak towers literally everywhere, because the Ukrainians are slaughtering everything inside of Russia without really anyone trying to stop them or anyone successfully stopping them at all. So once again,
Also, it seems like a bad thing to place the AD up next to the bridge like that, because if it's on the ground, if Ukraine wants to take out the AD, they fire at the ground. They're not firing necessarily at the bridge. But now if they want to take the AD out, now they're firing basically up at the bridge level, so they could hit the bridge while they're hitting the AD, or it could explode and then fall on the bridge. That seems like actually it's a worse thing if Ukraine tries to take it out.
Honestly, yeah, maybe like maybe the heat from the bridge burning, for example, if like there was a train on it, maybe it would end up warping the actual supports that pantsir is on, and it could end up getting dunked into the sea with a good bit of the bridge. It may be so, but it doesn't seem like a smart idea. And once again, the Russians are posting their L's online, which is kind of like a normal thing these days. But moving on out of Crimea and on out of, well, actually, before we move on from Russia, there was a big fire at the port of Azov today, which is kind of attached to the Rostov-on-Don port as a whole. They had pictures of it right there, as you can see, big fire. Looks like it's quite warm. And an anonymous donor just threw in a $333 donation and got us over the goal. We hit the goal.
Hey, we hit the goal. Yeah.
Let's go.
Igor. Man, $3,000 I love to see it.
Man, let's go, baby! And we love to see it. That is absolutely incredible. We hit the goal. Put an LSA in the chat, because the LSA is once again out here dominating in the field by making sure to pass another fundraiser goal. Absolutely incredible stuff right there, and we love to see it. And I know that the LSA loves to see it as well, because it is the collective efforts of this entire community that makes these incredible nonprofits and these fundraisers possible to support and to continue to help out in the world and continue the endless service that the LSA has been known for about 942 days, or really about 3 years at this point. Absolutely incredible stuff. But moving on from the port of Azov and on down into the Middle East, because y'all all know what's going to be going on down here. And actually, you know what? Before we move on into that, I don't mean to keep on just kind of like teasing the Middle East thing. But before we get on to that, I think this would be a good question to ask you. And so, do you think Russia will look for alternative weapons of mass destruction to supplement their failing nuke arsenal? And it seems like a lot of people are saying yeah. And then there's also a lot of people who are saying no. It's really a kind of like a split answer here on this. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so on this one, this was the question I actually asked a moment ago, and I turned it into a poll question. Do you think that now the nukes are failing back to back to back, that Russia will look for a alternative WMD, a weapon of mass destruction, to supplement it? So 33% said yes, they will, while 31% said no, Russia's not capable of the R&D on that, and 24% said probably, but nothing too wild. And on this one, the important aspect would be not necessarily to have a weapon that actually is effective, but to have a weapon which is very notorious and that scares the enemy. Because when it comes to a WMD, it's more important to have deterrence factor to it. While it is important, to actually cause damage when they launch the weapon, it's more important to use it for deterrence. So if they were to create, for example, a chemical weapon, they would hype that thing up like, oh, this is the most deadly thing we've ever created in the history of the world, and if we use it, it's going to change the face of the earth. So that way it would put fear in the enemy and hopefully deter the enemy from doing something toward Russia. So that would be the goal behind it. And I think Russia would at least attempt to do that because with the fourth failed test, they got to look for something because the nukes are starting to look a little bit feeble, which takes away their deterrence factor on the nuclear weapons. So I think they probably will turn to chemical weapons, maybe some other type of weapon, but probably chemical because Russia is actually pretty decent at developing chemical weapons. They've developed quite a few. So I'm actually with the 34%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 31% that said they aren't capable of that, because I just don't think they are. Because the Russians are wildly incompetent, and that's no joke. That's not a propaganda point or anything like that. They just have clearly shown on every degree, even in civil bureaucracy, they are just woefully incompetent at every single aspect of it. They suck. They really do. And I don't think they could ever go into a whole design process for that or a development process, because they also don't have the money. Like, that will probably cost a good bit of money to be able to come up with a very potent or dangerous chemical weapon or some sort of a biological weapon of a sort. And that would probably cost loads of money. And they don't even have the money to be able to update their conventional armed forces or just improve the old equipment they have. So much less would they have any kind of money to go and create something entirely new. They're probably just going to hope and pray that eventually the Sarmats start working, and that will probably be it, because that's what the Russians have been doing for 30 years now. They are constantly just hoping and praying that the stuff they have just works. Like in the war in Ukraine, we've never seen them develop any new weapons that are actually dangerous or potent or an actual threat. Everything they have is just something old that they kind of upgraded a little bit, and they're just praying it works. Like, many people don't know this, but the AK-12 was not supposed to look like the way it does now. And let me actually show y'all this by pulling this up right here. So this is the AK-12 as many of y'all know it. And to kind of like cut down to the very crux of the matter, the AK-12 was very simplified from what it was supposed to be. This is pretty much just an AK-74 with a Picatinny rail and some interesting furniture, and also a built-in folding stock with an extendable stock built onto the folding stock. So it is kind of neat in terms of like the ergonomics and stuff, but underneath that, it really is just an AK-74. It's not that special and it's not that unique. And a lot of people misunderstand. That's not what the Russians were initially going for in designing the AK-12s. The AK-12s were supposed to be an entirely new and revolutionary design that was going to way outdo the AK-74, which was in service in the Russian army at the time, and also wildly outdo the M4 carbine, or really the M16 or the Armalite platforms as a whole, and any other kind of Western weapons platforms that were still working on a 5.56 cartridge. This is the original first prototype of the AK-12, and you can see a whole bunch of differences here that if you really pay attention, they are different. For example, there is no detachable dust cover in the normal conventional way that an AKs exist on the top. There's a specific reason that that was done, and that's because if you have a detachable dust cover, which I'll show you all back up here, and you can see it right there, it is pretty much just the run-of-the-mill AK-74 dust cover. That thing actually rattles around a lot because the tolerances on it are really low, and that means that if you put an optic onto the top of that dust cover, because of how it exists, it actually ends up losing the zero on any kind of optic pretty much as soon as you fire it. That's why, and I'll show y'all something else here that's very important, that's why on weapons like the AKS-74U, otherwise known as the Crank here in America, I'm trying to find you all a picture of that really quickly. Here we go. So this is the Crank. And the Crank, the designers of the Crank, or largely just the carbine AK-74, they knew that that was a problem with the whole dust cover thing. So the dust cover on the AK-74 actually doesn't come off. It's actually directly attached to the actual receiver of the rifle, and it's on a hinge, meaning that there is an actual kind of like a point of contact, if you want to call it that, for the dust cover, which stops it from rattling around and losing a zero on a sight. The AK-12 doesn't have that, and that's because, once again, because of budget cuts, they pretty much had to go from this really cool and neat idea for a new kind of an AK, or an AK platform, and they had to simplify it down to really just a modernized AK-74 with some neat furniture. That, once again, is showing you all the kind of budget cuts that the Russians have to do to just make things viable, and then they have to pray that this ends up giving them the kind of advantage that they were looking for, that they really weren't able to get by just throwing money at something and getting an item like the original AK-12 that we see right here. Another thing, another good example of this, a great example, is the T-14 Armata. The T-14 Armata was supposed to be the greatest main battle tank in the world. The first one that was going to be put into service with a fully automated turret. There's not a single crew member in that turret. All three crew members were going to be in the hull and this ultra survivable cabin. The tank was going to be very easy to maintain, very easy to operate. The turret was going to be well armored, well protected. Everything was going to be brilliant. They were going to introduce these things into service and replace every single tank in the Russian army with an Armata. And that was all the way back 9 years ago that the Armata was unveiled at the May 9th Victory Day Parade, and everyone was shocked around the world at how modern this thing looks. And just about 6 months ago, they had to end up completely abandoning this project because it was just too expensive to even limited on a limited scale, introduce this thing into the Russian army. They have completely scrapped the concept, and these things largely just exist as propaganda vehicles at this point. They are woefully under-equipped, underperforming. They're terrible. The engines suck. The turret fails. The optics that the driver, the gunner, and the commander use are constantly failing. The crew compartment has been deemed slightly unsafe. The turret also has a load of problems. Most of the time, the gun sight for the main gun isn't even calibrated to the main optics. on the actual gunner's site, according to a lot of first-hand reports. It is a horrendous tank, and all of its flaws showed through very quickly, and the expenditure of introducing this thing and actually fleshing out these problems was so overwhelming for the Russians that they couldn't even replace the tanks they have. And this led them to, once again, lean back on those incredibly cheap, pray-to-God kind of modifications that they do, like the T-90M right here, which is just modifying a T-72 the most you can, and praying that that will give them the kind of advantage they're looking for on the battlefield. These are the kinds of things that the Russians do endlessly, and that's why I just think they never would be able to develop any kind of a weapon to replace their nuclear arsenal, because they can't even lay out the smallest expenditures to replace an AK-12, much less to come up with a whole new kind of a weapon of mass destruction that would actually give them a good strategic edge in the world. I just don't think it would be possible.
I would actually have to disagree personally, because I think for chemical weapons, it's actually not that expensive to produce them, to do the R&D on chemical agents. It does cost some money, obviously, but not a whole bunch. Where it gets expensive with chemical weapons is when you try to replicate tons and tons of it to use it in a large-scale military capacity. That's where it gets really expensive. But Russia's actually been a long-time pioneer in chemical weapons. In fact, let me see here. I don't want to quote this wrong. I think Russia either pioneered sarin or VX. I can't remember which one it was, but they've actually been doing significant research, and they have a whole entire like specialized department for chemical weapons. We do know that they have like certain quantities of them right now. We don't know the exact quantities, obviously that's classified, but I believe if they wanted to, they could find some money to probably either ramp up the quantity of one of their pre-existing agents or develop a new one, because the bioweapon, or not bioweapons, the chemical weapons are typically considered like the poor man's dirty nuke. That's what it's known as, and that would be Russia's go-to if they, for example, did not have working nukes. They would probably go to something cheaper to develop, like a chemical weapon that they could develop probably a lot faster. So I think they actually would go with chemical, and it would be actually feasible.
Maybe so. That may be the case. Who knows, though? Like, I'm sitting here looking at the time. I'm like, dang, dude, we've been on like 3 topics and it's taken an hour. We are really enjoying talking about the news tonight for sure. But moving on from that, it seems as though everyone's still split on this. Some people are saying that they're not capable. Some people are saying that they are. It's almost like a neck-and-neck tie right now. There's only a 2% disparity in between the two options. But we will see if the Russians end up trying to make a new path and try and create a new weapon of mass destruction, or if they just keep on the old tried and true path and just pray that things work. I think they'll go down that route. I still have to stick with my guns on that, because that's historically what they do in every category, like with the Kuznetsov or the Russian Navy or the Russian Army or the Air Force and everything else in between. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And before we move on, I do have to give a huge shout out to the fundraiser tonight. We haven't hardly been able to talk about it because we've been getting so deep into the news and talking about that so much. But the fundraisers end up raising an incredible $3,440 at the point that I'm looking at it right now.
That's crazy. That's very good. While my mic was cutting out right there, I said, "Oh wow," and it just cut out the first or last parts of it.
Yeah, man, it just went oh, and I was like, oh, I was like, all right, oh, but beyond that, that is absolutely incredible and absolutely crazy to think that the Lee Spring Army has once again passed another fundraiser goal. Fundraiser goals in this channel end up being pretty much just a little weekly objective. Everyone gets on, we all battle to make it to the top, we end up passing the goal, everyone celebrates, and we sit back and we enjoy the victory that we've once again won on this channel in terms of the fundraisers. But these things have a lot more behind them, and we don't really get to see that a lot, but let me remind you all of what this fundraiser and that $3,000, and let me make sure I get the number correct, $3,490 that's now been put in will help out to do. A Ukrainian soldier out there just stepped on a landmine today and probably lost one or both of his legs. He's now a double amputee, probably from the knees down. A group like Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, well, this is actually what Revive Soldiers of Ukraine does. Once this guy gets off the front lines and he gets to a medical institution, Revive Soldiers of Ukraine works with that guy all the way from the point he gets in that hospital to the point that he starts getting into rehab. They help him out in the hospital and in rehab, and they also help him to find prosthetic legs. And they help him out on the process the entire way. All expenses are paid for by Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, and they do incredible work. There's another Ukrainian soldier out there who just got shot in the head today, and somehow, miraculously, the way he was shot in the head, he's going to end up surviving somehow and have a second wind at life after being shot in the head. And this is actually a true story right here. Revived Soldiers of Ukraine worked with this guy as soon as he got in the hospital to help him out through all the surgeries and then to help him out with rehab afterwards so that way he could return to his life, the life that he lived beforehand with his wife and children. And if it wasn't for Revived Soldiers of Ukraine, that man may have not been able to really do what he's doing right now. He may have not been able to return back home and live the kind of normal life that he's living. He may have ended up almost being a vegetable of a sort, and while living, not really having that much of a life to live for. But through y'all's support to an amazing nonprofit like Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, and that Ukrainian soldier that lost his legs is going to be able to walk again. He probably may even be able to choose to serve the Ukrainian army again if he so wishes. And the other soldier that got shot in the head, he'll be able to go back home to his family and largely live a fairly normal life again, thanks to the rehab that was provided by Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. Y'all are responsible for this stuff. Make no mistake about that. Y'all are the ones who are supporting these nonprofits that we run every single Sunday and fundraise for on this channel. Y'all are the ones that are making it possible for these people to have a second wind at life, a second chance. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to say that the Leaf Spring Army is truly as incredible and grand as it is, because we wouldn't be able to have the kind of impact and the kind of a major impact that we have helping out people. We wouldn't be able to make that possible. And so I got to say a huge thanks to y'all once again for supporting this fundraiser tonight so massively and helping out once again. No one asks anyone to, and the Ukrainians largely only get support from public will, and nevertheless y'all continue to step forward even 942 days on the countdown to 1,000 days of war. The LSA continues to soldier on more fervently than any other community I've ever really seen, and continues to make sure to help out those folks over there that we're covering the news on. And so before we move on from this, I do want to make sure that we give a big shout out to some of the top donors of the night. We would give a shout out to every single one of y'all if we could, but there are so many of y'all that if we were to shout out every single person who threw in a donation, we would be here all night. So we limit it to everyone who threw in anything above 50, but I want to make sure that everyone who did throw in a donation below 50, y'all know that we're incredibly grateful and appreciative to y'all as well. Y'all are also a huge part of making this this reality happen that occurs every single Sunday, where this channel is able to help out folks overseas, the soldiers of Ukraine that have been wounded in the line of service. Y'all are as big a part of that as the top donors are as well. And every single one of y'all has played a major role in making this fundraiser tonight possible. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we've had some really big donations coming in tonight. And also, real quick, before I jump into our list and a spreadsheet here, huge shout out to the anonymous donors tonight. Y'all know who you are, but you didn't want your name attached to the donation for some reason or another, and I respect that. But huge thanks to everyone who threw in those anonymous donations. Those were actually the largest ones of the night. But with that, we're now jumping into our known donors of the night, the top donors. And the first one here goes to Tom S., who throws in a $250, and he is the largest known donor of the night, and huge shout out to Tom for that. Also, huge shout out to Daniel Anderson for throwing in a $200 donation, also very generous, along with Fachado, who threw in a $150, along with Andy L., who also threw in a $150, and then we had a $100 from some guy called The Enforcer, as well as a $100 from S. Bogey, as well as Hal Rose, Gene Kustra, Joshua Times, and a $54 from Paramecium 13, as well as a $50 from Gordon Peterson, who sounds like Jordan Peterson, but it's Gordon Peterson, and also a $50 from Ted Mitchell, Gary Moore, Cliff H., Axel K., Avari Mandabratis, Skip Tracer 007, SG Lyositis, as well as Johnny B. And huge shout out to all of our top donors tonight for helping us to reach that goal. And we're up to $3,600 now. And let me make sure I didn't miss anyone here. Let's see here. Value Radar threw in a 69. Nice. I love to see it. And also, by the way, huge shout out to everybody we were not able to call off as well. We're only able to call off the top donors because, like the Enforcer said, if we call off everybody, we would be doing this for probably like 30 minutes straight, just calling off donors, which would be insane. And also, we wouldn't be able to get to all the news. So huge shout out to everybody once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta tell you that the dichotomy of man, or whatever the hell Jordan Peterson would be saying. Oh man,
it's so sad. It's so sad. I just can't get on with it, man.
You see, when SpongeBob says he lives in a pineapple under the sea, or some crap like that. It's gonna be something ridiculous. But beyond that, I gotta say a huge thanks to all y'all once again. I feel like I gave y'all a massive thanks beforehand, but once again, a huge thanks to every single person, even the folks that aren't supporting the fundraiser tonight. Y'all have a massive impact as well by hitting the like button on these streams, or telling your friends and family about it, or telling folks that may be able to support these kinds of fundraisers about the fundraisers. Y'all make these things possible. Every single one of y'all in the LSA, whether y'all were able to support this fundraiser massively tonight, a little bit, or not at all, every single one of y'all plays a role in this amazing Lee Spring army that's been made around this channel and makes what we do a reality. Each and every one of y'all does. And I got to thank y'all once again for that massive impact that y'all are having, because it makes sure that the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it's time for us to move on into some live chat questions. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And also, real quick, shout out to Joshua Times during another $100 donation. Excuse me about that. And thank you, Joshua, for that generosity for the fundraiser as well. And also, by the way, we're about to jump into our live chat questions. But remember, folks, no super chats tonight. It is fundraiser night, so we don't do super chats. So if you have a live chat question, which I do need some more, I only have about 10 so far, feel free to tag @EnforcerMatt in the live chat and put your question behind it, and I will add it to our spreadsheet, and we'll probably be able to answer it tonight based on how many we have. So, also, Joshua Times threw in another $100 donation and brought us up to $3,798 raised, and we're almost going to hit 4,000 on the total amount right there. So love to see it, and also a huge shout out to Joshua Times once again. So with that, we're jumping into our first one, which goes to Plexus Gaming, and they said, have you two got anything up to date about the U.S.-Russia tension increase over Alaska?
We haven't gotten anything because those claims are absolutely asinine. Like, well, there isn't really a tension for us to have because Alaska is sovereign American territory. It's sovereign American land. If the Russians want Alaska back, they can have it over our cold, dead hands, and that's going to happen after they're dead. So I haven't been hearing a lot about any escalations going on about that, because that was one of the stupidest claims I've ever heard, is the Russians trying to say that Alaska is theirs. It's like, if it is yours, you shouldn't have sold us to it. You shouldn't have sold it to us back in the 1860s. Womp womp. Next question. I hope that does address that well, though. But I haven't heard anything about it. And if we did, the only thing I would be wanting to hear is that the United States would be getting ready to obliterate a Russian Navy or a Russian fleet in the area, because they're running their mouths a little bit too much. That would be my honest take on that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next live chat question goes to Philip Fixes LSA, who says, how often does the U.S. test its own ICBM missiles?
We test them out here and there. I actually know some folks that are around Vandenberg Space Base, Space Force Base, and they actually ended up conducting an ICBM test out of Vandenberg, I think about a month ago or so. As Joshua Times throws in a 500. Damn! That's huge!
Dang, Joshua's throwing in almost 1,000 combined or something like that. He's really on up there.
Man, that's crazy. Like I tell you, that's actually huge. And I think we've reached, let's see here, $4,307. Dang.
Oh,
Joshua
we're getting
Times.
our way toward 5,000 almost.
Man, Joshua Times is killing it. I gotta say, absolutely insane. But beyond that, we do test out our ICBMs here and there, but we don't end up having a lot of failures. Failures in our tests are very rare. Usually they go without a hitch, without a single problem at all, and they're very successful. Also, really quickly, Matthew, I was curious, very curious here. Oh yeah, there we go, man. I was wondering where in the world we were. The railroad passed right by Vandenberg. We saw this, Matthew. We saw it.
That was some of the most scenic part of the train route, was going through this dead zone right here, through this area of the Air Force Base. Very nice coastline right there. And also you could turn around and look behind you and see that nice little like outcropping right there, which was very beautiful as well when you're going around that bend.
Man, and you know something, man? One thing I love the most is that on Amtrak, they give you free drinks, you see, at least at dinner time. And so people would be getting sloshed, and I would go up to them and I'd say, hey, how are y'all liking the coastline? And they go, It's all light. like all right, but kind of like drunk, and slurring it, Maybe that wasn't a good joke. Maybe I'll have to go back to the drawing
I didn't
board.
get it.
It's all right, but it's slurred, so it's R light, something like that, Huh.
I think I got you. I got you.
Man, you don't. You don't, but that's
No.
fine. But still, beyond that, it's pretty cool. I mean, who can deny it? It is pretty cool. And it's pretty neat to know that all of the launch sites are right along the railroad as well, because the railroad's right there. And the launch sites are right over here. Pretty neat, at least in my opinion. But beyond that,
Oh, also, Barry Badman said, was it clear enough to see the Channel Islands out there? We saw the oil rigs, like all the like offshore rigs out there. I took a picture of a couple of them. I think we could like see the outline of the islands. I can't remember for certain.
We did.
Could we?
Yeah,
we
we
did.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember seeing some landmass out there. I didn't know what it was, so it was those islands right here. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we saw these islands a lot. They pretty much were like in the sight line the whole time that we were near the coast. Because you enter the coast on the Coast Starlight. Out of LA, you go to Burbank, and then you go to Oxnard, and then you hit the coast through Oxnard. And then you go along the coast pretty much all the way up to San Luis Obispo. So you got to see the islands pretty much most of the way that you were there on the beach. You saw the Channel Islands out there in the distance. One thing, though, that I got to say, like, this was actually really interesting to me, and I'm seeing if I can try and find this town really quickly. Was it Santa Barbara? I think
Santa Barbara was nice. It was expensive too. I remember checking the house prices there, and it was like out of this world crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the train station here. Where in the world was that train station? Let's see.
It was on the coast.
Yeah, it was along the coast. Oh, here we go. Here it is. Right here. So y'all want to see the train station that was at Santa Barbara? It was pretty cool, actually. So this is it. Yeah, there's that Southern Pacific car right there, too. So this is the spot. So this was their little train station. And you see, like, the little buildings that are in Santa Barbara. They're very nice. It's like a Mission Revival kind of an architecture. And that's the station. And so the train literally just pulls up smack dab in the middle of the town. And you can get off. And the beach is literally just a block or two away from you at that point. And it was so cool. It was really neat getting into town by the train, because one thing that they just don't tell you is that trains usually go through the middle of towns, because the towns were built around the railroads. And so you got to see pretty much the entire town by the railroad, and you didn't have to do any of the driving, which is really nice, because there was like no red lights or stop signs you were having to pay attention to that took your focus away from really looking at the town you were passing through. You could literally just stare it through the town from street to street and kind of get an idea of what it looked like. And Santa Barbara was incredibly nice. Like, it was insanely good. Like, let me see if I can drop y'all down on this street right here. Kind of give you a little bit of a better idea. This is Santa Barbara. This is like what the whole town looked like on the train. It was beautiful.
It seemed like the clean version of like Santa Monica or something. I don't know anything about Santa Barbara, but it seemed like maybe it was like the cleaner city that we came across in California, if there really is one. But it seemed pretty clean.
Yeah, it was really clean. Like, it was wildly clean. It was really nice. I liked how they kind of had like a uniform style, at least where the train was passing through near to the coast. It was really nice. I was really impressed with it, like all the way around. And I was like, hell, this is nice. But then you look at the prices, and it's like $9 million for like an average house in that area. And then it's like, well, like, it's nice, but I could never afford to live here. But still, it was pretty cool.
And then like $4,000 a month for like a 300 square foot little 1-bedroom apartment or something. It's like, geez, that's like $4,000 a month. That's like for like a 3 or 4-bedroom apartment, like anywhere else, like in Alabama.
Yeah, really. It's like the prices out there were just crazy all day long. There was never a moment where I was like, oh, these prices are affordable. No, it was like, these prices are completely insane. Like, I would never be able to afford to live here. Like, just to give you an idea, we would have to run at like what we do right now. This channel would have to have like 20 million subs and getting that many views every single day for us to be able to live out there. Like, that's the kind of cost it is. Like, a YouTuber could never live in California unless if you were like, you had like millions of subs. You never would be able to afford it. We would literally go broke just trying to stay out there for like 4 months or 5 months or something like that. I feel sorry for everyone who's out there, because everyone who I talked to that is from there was complaining that like the prices are so expensive. No one in California in my generation even looks at buying a house, because the houses are just that expensive. It's not even something that you would be able to save up for your entire lifetime and be able to get one. So the entire generation that's kind of growing up right now, all of them are having to become renters. And that is not really. Like, to be honest with y'all, renting isn't really American because a lot of American rights kind of revolve around private property ownership, and you don't really get all of the rights as a full-fledged American citizen by being a renter. You kind of get a separate set of rights, which are almost annotated compared to what you get being a private property owner with your own residence and stuff like that. It's a kind of a different
Also, you
ordeal.
get no equity either. You're just like you're throwing money at the landlord. They're keeping it, and you're getting no equity in anything. At least when you own a house, like you have maintenance costs with it, but at least you have value in the house that you can try to extract out of it when you sell it. And hopefully, like the goal with real estate is to appreciate the value on the property. Like that's the way it's supposed to work. Some places it doesn't work like that because it's a weird economy. But if you can, that's the way to do it. So that way you're building value over time instead of just losing money through rent.
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy thing how it works out there. Like the economic model for California right now for people who are growing up that didn't own a house before it became like this, it's impossible to get one. And I feel sorry for them because there are ways to try and fix that, but they're really tough to implement. Like, either direction that you want to go down. And of course, we can't get into this too much because this actually gets into a really big domestic political issue these days because everyone's trying to figure out how to solve these kinds of problems. But either way that you try and travel down that path, it ends up being incredibly difficult to really do anything about it because there are so many different kinds of bureaucratic institutions or people who are going to push against whatever you're trying to implement that it becomes very hard, if not impossible, to actually change the situation quickly and efficiently. So yeah, a little bit of a rough thing there with that, but still, it was beautiful, and I will say that for it 100%. Also, where in the world? I'm trying to think, Matthew. Where in the world was that place? I think it was beyond San Luis Obispo, where it was just like valleys of agriculture, and it just went on. Yeah, it was above San Luis Obispo because this is the valley. Yeah, right here that this interstate is on. Let's see. Actually, this is State Highway 101. So this little valley here. This thing was crazy. Like, it was literally just like 300 miles straight of farmland. That was it. There was nothing else. And I guess that this giant valley over here, where one of the large natural lakes used to exist, which was right down here, is the 6th largest natural lake in the world. They got drained back in the late 1800s. But this is probably, it actually looks like it's exactly identical. It's the same thing pretty much. But with that, I hope that does address that well. I hope you all enjoyed this little rabbit hole. But moving on from that, and also I see someone saying something about some people say just cancel your avocado toast subscription. And yeah, that
Would help, but it wouldn't fix the problem.
that would help, but hardly at all. Like really, because like if you really deal with the finances of if a basic house is $2 million. You're dealing with peanuts at that point, trying to cancel a $15 a day ordeal. You're still not going to be able to save up enough money over your whole lifetime, even at that point. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news. And we actually have some pretty interesting news coming out of the Kursk Oblast, as we got to see a Ukrainian peon has been moved in. And we're going to be muting the song sung by a child for some reason. Babushka! And we can see a crab pass by, and there it goes. And they're still trying to get that peon going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. But moving on from that and on to our next bit of news, we can also see that apparently the Russians were observing what's cooking. And do you smell what the rock is cooking? I don't, because it smells like phosphorus. And it looks like the Ukrainians dropped thermite on the Russian positions. And this Russian here was just taking a little gander at that, seeing his position burning to the ground just a couple of dozen feet away. Kind of not a fun day. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, the offensive inside of the Reka Sem area is going so well for Ukraine. The Russians are starting to take risks, and they're actually starting to use heavier air support, for example, Fab 3000s, to try and deal with the Ukrainian advance. We can actually see the explosion up there on screen of a Fab 3000 glide bomb, and it's showing for the first time ever Russian air power being used in the area to strike at Ukrainian forces. This is showing that it's gotten so bad in this area, they're willing to risk valuable aircraft and pilots to be able to try and slow down the Ukrainian advance and give them some time to be able to make some decisions or issue orders to their forces on that side of the river. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Kursk area. News continues on as normal, largely in that area, and down into our location unknowns, because we got to see a little race. The Russians had a little race today. Y'all want to see how it went? I'll show y'all how it went. They be racing. Oh, and what's this? Oh, a charged truck. Oh, and they're racing again. There they go. Oh!
Oh!
I think one of them just won.
Man, that was like an IED from the Middle East or something just went off on that one.
Yeah, man, you look, the guy up front, he won the #1 spot. Look at that. He's right there, and then he's not. He won. We won, Mr. Smith.
They call him Houdini.
Man, this right here is the Russian version of Mario Kart, and this guy filming whipped out the blue shell and slammed him with it or something like that. But still, as you can see, the races in Ukraine that the Russians are conducting ending up really interesting these days. We also got to see the Ukrainians using a French Milan ATGM. They actually have a decent amount of these, but we never really see footage of them being used. Hopefully this doesn't have music in it.
Знімаю. А поле?
You see them just waiting, biding their time, ready to launch. Artillery just landing all around out there, you know, as it does. It is war after all. Oh. Oh, and there we go.
Oh.
And what
I
we
shall
got?
return firepower with superior firepower.
And what do we have here? Oh. They're loading up another one, fresh from the vine. It's ready to fire, and they're about to fire that thing. Here they go. Boosh.
Меня, Андрей!
Dang, they're slamming them.
Меня! На!
This would sound just like a good old Western if it wasn't for the massive missile going off.
Yeah, honestly, it would. Here they go again. Fwapang. Here we come. Oh. Get him. Oh! Oh! Toast. That's the end of that clip. But isn't it nice to see the Ukrainians toasting Russians? They're keeping them warm. Moving on from that, we also got to see a BMP-1TS. This is a BMP with a modified turret that pretty much has the same firepower as a BTR-4. And we can also see that they have an electronic warfare jamming system on top of it too. Pretty cool to see. We don't see these a lot, but the Ukrainians are trying to introduce these to be a little bit more common than they have been throughout the war, and it's neat to see that the Ukrainians are trying to domestically produce something, considering that their war industry isn't exactly incredibly large. But moving on from that, we also get to see the Russian casualty report for the day, and oh my lord! It was crazy.
Oh gosh, 19 Bobcats. What the hell? Like, they've gone crazy out here. I'm telling you what, that's really good to see. Also, I like to scan for bots too. That's my new thing as well. I see the Bobcats here. That's tremendous. Let's see. I don't really see any bots over there, I don't think, unless I'm not reading something properly. Kind of interesting. No bots today, but tremendous Bobcats. I guess that scared the bots off. But Enforcer, tell us more.
Oh man, what happened in Romania? I'm not scrolling down in that comment section no matter what. But beyond that, the losses were incredibly high today. And we were very happy to see that. 1,500 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. That is about 2 entire battalion tactical groups that were wiped out in terms of combat power in one day. One of the highest losses that we've seen, and I think in a second, Nestisa is going to tell us, because she is the keeper of the records, if this is close to being the highest casualty day in the war. It's probably very high. Let's see here. 4th highest daily And let's see, is the fourth highest daily loss. Top three are all in May 2024. So this is the top third. This is the third highest casualty day, if I'm understanding that message from Mistisa correctly, in the war. This is an incredibly good day for Ukraine. And once again, 1,500 troops were wounded and killed in 24 hours. 52 APCs, 57 supply trucks, 22 main battle tanks, 63 artillery pieces, 67 drones, 2 MLRSs, and 19 Bobcat skid steers. It was an incredibly good day, and now it's time for us to bring y'all to those front lines so that way y'all can see why it was such a good day. Starting off with a tank of the 36th Brigade, a T-64 BV. Wonderful picture. Keep it up. Moving on from that, and down to the Severonsky Forest, we then got to see fighting in the forest. Y'all have heard Chad music, but you've never heard it from Thorn Group, have you? And we can see here, the Ukrainians looking around. Chad music still ensuing? Oh, yeah. But we can see them firing that gat. And we can see this man has the RPG. And Mistisa, thank you for the correction. It is not the third highest day. It's the fourth highest day in the entirety of the war. We now see them continuing to fire out of the bunker. By the way, this is archival footage. It was just found today, but this is from, I believe, 2023. So this is actually a little old. A little old, just a little.
This is vintage.
Oh, yes, a fine vintage. The Ukrainian Chad music has grown on me, gotta admit. It has not grown on me. I'll tell you that because I hear it every day, and I'm so tired of hearing funk Chad music. I'm literally, like, exhausted by it. And also the same songs, like that one guy at the beginning of the war who, like, sung the Chervona Kalina song, and he was like, oh yeah, Luci Chervona Kalina. I've heard that so many times, I hate it now. I'm like, I just want that to stop. Like, and it's always got that little bum 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 like little beat behind it, and it's like this is just like it. Like there's a point to where it turns into Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You" in the retail store kind of a thing. It's like this is so old. Please don't play this again. And then they do. And then another
Chad
one.
music the Chad music surely didn't age well. The at least the footage though, this archival footage aged like fine wine. But the Chad music, like they've been using that for years, like years and years and years. I have no idea why they haven't like listened to like anyone that shows the footage, because I'm sure that pretty much everybody out there that shows this footage would like love to have that music taken out and just a normal like audio from the video put in it, because nobody wants to hear that. Because people that are like showing it, they can't get copyrighted by showing it and letting that music play. So I don't know why they do that.
Oh yeah, and another one, Matthew, is that you know that song. That one is a very common one too, and I don't know why, because it's just like cancer. And then
I don't even know where they found it either. I've never heard that music like even once in my life, like anywhere other than a Ukrainian war video. I don't even know where they found it.
I don't even know either. Like it's horrendous music. Like it really is. It's just not good. Like I don't like I'm all for Western interest, all for Ukraine because of that, but at the same time, I just don't like the music. Like I at this point I'm so tired of it. Like it was good at the start, but when you play them over and over and over for 3 years, they just get old, you know? But moving on from that, I also see a lot of people bringing up the Israel news. Did I cover it? Did I? I didn't. And to really quickly cover this, just to keep you all apprised of the situation, military sources say that Israel is planning a ground offensive into Lebanon that would include the capture of a buffer zone consisting of a few miles of territory north of the border. That is really our only update from the area, but it does seem as though Israel is once again eyeballing some sort of a ground invasion of Lebanon, and we'll be waiting to see if that actually happens or if that plan is shelved once again. But moving on from that and back up into Ukraine, it's now time for us to move on towards Seversk, where we got to see some of the action happening around the area. Oh, that sounds kind of new, but we can see out here near Seversk, they're getting slammed. Someone said, it's based music. it is sort of until you hear it like 900 thousands of times. Because every week, just to put this out there for y'all, while we've run this show for maybe like 130 weeks at this point, and every single week I have to go through and listen or watch about 500 to 600 individual video clips. A lot of those don't make it onto the show. And so for 100, like, let me do the math here. 130 times 500, that is 65,000 video clips. Now, tell me this. If you heard the same Chad music 65,000 times, would you like it anymore, or would you be tired of it? Or if you heard the same guy going, "Oh yeah, Lucy, Chavanagalina," you would be like, "I'm tired of it. Like, I just want this to, like, I want some variety now." And that's why whenever we hear something different, we're like, "Oh, we're like, look at that," because it's like, it's actually nice. And so with that's the end of the clip. Very nice to see that they were working well in that area, and hopefully they keep on working well. But moving on that, we also get to see the K2 battalion capturing a Russian with a drone. We won't be showing this whole clip. We'll only be showing a part of it because it's 13 minutes long. But we see the drone coming out and looking around, just taking a good look. Oh, we got something blurred here. What do we have here?
We have a distortion in the Matrix.
Oh, it's a blip. A literal blip on the radar. Interesting.
Escape the Matrix. Get a Bugatti.
What kind is your Bugatti? How many women do you have in your harem? Or something like that.
Oh, jeez. Oh, did they have fully?
How many women are you?
Lord.
How many women are you putting out against the will? Like, it's like none. It's like, because that's not what you're supposed to do.
How many years have you got in prison?
Man, that guy. Man, I saw a horrific meme about that guy today, man. It was like when the Romanian government takes away your illegal harem, and he was sitting there and he was like, "This can't be," or something like that. And he was like crying and everything. Oh man, it was hilarious. There's the Russian guy. He's like, "Please no." He's going to give up. We see him just down there. They're about to drop the letter to him here in a bit. So we now see the drone flying literally right above the craters. And we see them looking down. I don't know why they, they dropped the bomb, sorry, so that way they wouldn't drop the bomb on him, so they just dropped it off in the grass where it wouldn't explode. We're going to be skipping forward a little bit here in this clip. We now see him reading the letter, telling him to surrender. We see him agreeing with it and then taking a drink from the bottle of water. And then a little bit later on down the road, they begin him on his trek from this position that he's been in for 7 straight days after the assault failed and pretty much everyone in the trench work got killed except for him. And we see him making his way, following the drone, to the Ukrainian position where he'll be giving up and surrendering.
That dude is very lucky the Ukrainians aren't barbarians, because the Russians would have gone ahead and dropped the bomblet.
Yeah, we can see the guy is worn out from exhaustion. He's actually dropping out because he's malnourished and he's heavily dehydrated because he's literally been just hanging out in a trench for about a week, just hoping that he doesn't get hit by a FPV drone or something along those lines. Moving on from this, we can see that later on, they came back and gave him a cigarette, interestingly enough. He then continues on the venture towards the Ukrainian positions. We now see him finally making it to what seems to be a Ukrainian trench. And moving on from there, we can see him moving through the trench. It appears that it also was coming under artillery fire just a moment ago. And skipping on forward, we can now see the Ukrainian soldiers coming up and taking him prisoner. And that's the end of the clip for the large part, but very nice to see that the Ukrainians conducted an act of civility and ended up taking this Russian soldier prisoner when he decided to give up to the drone. But moving on from that and down into the area around Kursk, we also got to see the Dragon's Breath drone cooking some Russians. Look at that. They're just covering them with glitter. Hot glitter. Long-lasting glitter.
That's so nice of them to go ahead and illuminate their positions like that. I'm sure they can see much better now.
It's like a nightlight.
You can see so clearly now once the once the little napalm's falling down. Just scorched earth.
Man, just cooking them up, man. Cooking them up Gary's way. Dang, and it's warm down there. We like it when it's warm.
Oh, dreadful, dreadful.
Oh, those carp.
The rats be cooking.
And that's right, Melanie. They're just lighting the way. They're helping them out with some safety lights, so that way they can see their positions at night.
Oh wow, they really caught the place on fire now. That's just a wildfire.
Man, Smokey the Bear is dying of a stroke every day he watches the war in Ukraine. Really, I mean, he's like, only you can stop it, and you're starting it. But anyways, moving on from that, and into Touretsk, we also get to see the Ukrainians making an IED with a couple of anti-tank mines. Check this out.
The devil and the red lighting.
The devil and deep-fried duct tape noises. If duct tape was that loud in real life, you wake up the entire zip code by using it. Like, that is insanely loud.
Давай, как холодно. Давай быстрее. На нее бить? Уши.
Oh!
Oh,
Я ебу.
the devil was impressed by that one.
Dude, imagine going up and being like, Sergeant Devil, what are we going to do? We're gonna go over there and we're gonna blow their asses up. That's what we're going to do. Give me the bomb. It's like, I don't know if I want to be in that platoon. I'd be like, request a transfer, please, sir. But moving on from that, we did get to see also that they were slamming Russian forces as well in another nearby area in New York, of all places. Start spreading the news. Boom, 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 boom. I'm leaving today. But we can see them here, finding the Russians, slamming them, hitting them, blasting them even. Long blasting. it's a long...
Long blasting. Let's see. It can't be long blasting piece. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the last word could be.
Long blasting bitch. Something like that. And we can see BMP just going ham, and then it got blown up, and it's cooking off while it's on the move right there.
Long blasting bot.
Hans McCurdy said, dude, you should get permabanned from titles like this. Your mother ought to get permabanned from every street because she's the one passing the syphilis around. Jeez. Come on.
No.
Have some realism here. That's like, can't she read? Or don't she have reading comprehension? It says nuke missile, not nuke. Please do read. I beg of you. Really. I do. Reading comprehension is hard-pressed these days, because if it was a nuke blowing up, I would have said Russian nuke explodes, not Russian nuke missile. The nuke missile implies it is a missile intended to carry a nuke, which is exactly what blew up today. Please.
Now watch out now. Don't make me go get you a pack of those reading Rainbow books. Make you read the whole pack.
those reading rainbow books narrated by Geordie LaForge from Star Trek The Next Generation. Don't make me. We will. But moving on from that, we did get to see...
Hooked on phonics is after that, if that doesn't work.
Man, dude, we're really going at him at this point. I mean, dang. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see the 110th Brigade doing a little bit of work in the Pokrovsk direction today. Oh, and there they are. See them bringing out the biggins. Setting up the motors. Putting up the AT mine with the fin. Flying on out. And Paramecium 13 said, you should just write a 500-word essay as to... Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sit there and write the title. It's going to be like the entire monologue I do for the whole stream. It's going to go, hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and welcome back to the breaking news. Today's breaking news. And that's going to literally just be like the first part of the title. That's just like 0.1% of it. I'm gonna make the title like Hot Dog Man makes it. Squibby got ganged or some stupid shit like that. It's gonna be wonderful. It's really gonna be incredible.
Man.
Aw, man. I might be losing subs, but those people are assholes or something like that. Like, man,
goes from wow, big military maneuver by Ukraine. Oh wow, that's big. Goes to Bibby spins the block, wins the Glock. Top news here. It's like going from like covering like legit news to like trash news. It's like, and why are you losing subs again? Now, let me think about it.
Wait a minute. Let me go here. So we got Ukraine Action Summit prep, latest war news, and then after that, Washington D.C. late night safety meeting. What the hell is he in OSHA now? He's doing safety meetings. Like, what is he got? Like a little yellow vest? He's doing like a thing on a checkboard. Like, what's going on here? Pre-Ukraine Action Summit safety meeting. What the hell are these? Like, what is that? Anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see that our Ukrainian soldier here set up the RPG right out the opening in the door. Well, out of the wall, more so, and black blast, folks, and it looks like there was a lot of it, kicking up a load of dust, maybe even asbestos, and they're going to load up the next round. Man, imagine sitting there and saying that you're a top-notch journalist and making the entire stream that's literally called a safety meeting. It's not even like your audience is there with you. Why are you having a safety meeting with an online audience? Like, what are you going to tell them? Don't trip? It's like they're not even with you. like what the hell are you doing?
Kaltenberg said he has a stressful life, apparently. Very stressful. Full of stress. Do I put the ketchup on backwards or front ways?
Aw, man, I had to quit my job at the hot dog stand because it was too much work, giving people a pre-cooked hot dog that's boiling in some water or sitting on a griddle. Aw, man, that was too much for me. I need to sit around and smoke weed every day. It's like, how the hell, like, I don't even know. I give up for the large part on analyzing that clown.
Where's the bun go?
Where do you put the bun? Aw, man.
Those questions keep me up at night. I said, they said they want ketchup or mustard. I gave them mustard, and they cussed me out, flipped me off, and they told my manager.
Oh, man. Dude, imagine having just such an offensive aura about you that when you walk up to someone, you're like, are you getting that cheese like you're from Vermont? They immediately go, kiss my ass, you bastard. It's like, how in the world can you just have like this thing about you where people immediately don't like, I don't even know how in the world that works. But anyways, we did get to see a little turret toss, which was deleted, so we won't be showing you all that. But we also did get to see the Ukrainians adjusting fire with the Leleka. Check this one out. This is actually pretty cool. Oh, you can see here. And we see a grad. They're actually following that little grad down there. Look at it go. The Leleka is just making sure to keep an eye on it. Make sure that it's safe. And there goes the round. You actually see that they showed that off multiple times as the grad is firing off its rockets down there. And, oh, buddy. Not a good day for them down there. I'm telling you, that Leleka's got an eye for him. And they put the grad in the trees, and the grad is not going to be stretching its knees no longer. It's done for. And someone said, "Come on, Enforcer, putting hot dog to bun is a task that calls for a college education." Yeah, that's even the funnier thing about it. Is that the guy apparently did try and use his GI Bill to go to college, and he ended up dropping out of college in, like, I guess, like, one of the first semesters or something. It's like, how in the hell can you talk about work ethic, like, when you can't even get through college? It's, like, the easiest thing to do, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'll tell you all this. I think that guy was 100% shamming while he was in the army. Like, I will put money on that. If we could find some unit commander of his and get him on the phone and ask about that guy, they probably would say he was one of the worst people in the unit. I would put money on it.
Call him the light duty king.
Yeah. Oh man, he's the real shammer. He learned from the best. He didn't even have to get in the E4 Mafia to learn how to sham. He just came equipped, shamming installed. Oh man.
He can scrub the latrine with a toothbrush better than the best of them.
Yeah. And then to talk about I work really hard. It's like, doing what? Being a loser? It's like, I don't know. Like, it's an enigma to me. He works really hard getting onto other people's shows, so that way he can get flamed on the show and look like a weak coward, and then talk shit about him after he gets off the show, and then get copyright strike for it somehow. And all that, like, oh man, that's what he does. And with that, that's the end of that clip. Really nice to see, though. And moving on from that and into our next one, we also got to see the SBU in operation in Pokrovsk as well, which is actually pretty unique. But Matthew, I heard you about to say something right there. What were you about to say?
I was about to say cough, cough, but then I muted the mic.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Oh man.
Havlin Tuff said, I mean, they put all the smart ones in transportation. Now, I'll say this. I'm not saying that, like, if you're in transportation in the military, you're not smart or something like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like, there's smart people that drive the trucks in the military, like, all day long. But he was in the Army, and if I'm not mistaken, the Army lets you pick your job. And the Air Force lets you have, like, a wish list. You get to put it in order, and they might give you your job, maybe. But I think the Army, you get, like, pretty much to pick what you want. They put you in. Am I correct with that, Enforcer, before I go any further?
The Army is the only branch that lets you pick your job.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think you do have to meet a certain ASVAB score, though, to get certain jobs in the Army. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, I don't know if maybe he was only able to qualify for transportation because his ASVAB was low, or if he picked that. I don't know too many people that go in the Army, like, specifically, like, looking to go into transportation. I don't know of many like that. But it could be maybe his ASVAB was very low. That's also a possibility.
Let's see. ASVAB score for 92 Alpha. I think that's what he was in. Let's see. ASVAB scores. Let's see here. I need to go find this. See, we need to go to trainee language. So let's see here. We need to find this. We need to find this right now. We need to find this 92 Alpha. There we go. Automated logistical specialist. So it says CL90. And let me go up here. Let me make sure. Let's see. Army line scores. They are broken down in clerical. Let's see. This is not how I remember us doing the ASVAB, because you got a raw score. You didn't get one of 10 different ones, and then that's how you figured out how to get your job. I remember it was just like an overall score, and they tell you what jobs you could get off of that overall score. So let's see here. Let's see. Hang on. Hold up. Just found something here. I might have as an answer. Okay, so to get into 92 Alpha, which is what he was in, which is pretty much just a truck driver, you have Wait, hang on, hold up. So interestingly enough, you have to make like a 50 or something. So it's kind of down near the lower end. Like the minimum score you have to make, I think, to get into the army is like a 35. So you're literally like 15 points above not getting in the army at that point. Highest score you can get on the ASVAB is a 99. But anyways,
Also, I think an 88 Mike is a truck driver, by the way.
let's see. I think if I remember correctly, he was either 88 Mike or he was 92 Alpha when we looked into it. I forgot what it was, but the ASVAB scores for that aren't incredibly high. So it's like it's not like you're getting like a 90 or something to do that job. Like you're literally making an ASVAB score so low the Air Force wouldn't take you. Like that's kind of the score you would get right there. But anyways, with that, we're moving on into our next one further down the line. If y'all are wondering, we did take the ASVAB. I'll tell y'all. Matthew made, I think, his highest score. What was your highest score, Matthew? It was like an 88?
It was either an 89 or something around that area like that.
Yeah, and I think my highest score was an 82 or an 84. I can't remember. I think it was an 82. But I remember that we made scores high enough that the recruiters were like all coming to us and they were like, oh, you could get like any job, like you could do anything. And so we were still like, nah, we don't. We're good, because at that point I already figured out I'd gotten scoliosis. Matthew didn't have any ambition to get into the armed forces. I clearly couldn't. And then once I started telling him, yeah, I got like the scoliosis of this like curvature, the recruiters just stopped talking to me completely. They're like, you're dead to me. And I was like, all right, fair. I was like, I kind of am. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see that some explosions occurred in Zaporizhia today. We were told that some of the electrical grid did go offline from the explosions. We have not been able to ascertain any casualties or civilian losses because of these explosions yet. But with that, we're now going to be moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day, as my esophagus collapses again, on day 942 of the war. Whoa, where is he? Where the hell is he? He's inside of a transport.
I wish you health.
Oh, hold up, we're not having that audio track. No. All right, so without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Розпочинаємо візит в Сполучені Штати. Зараз летимо в Пенсильванію. Особливий візит, потім Нью-Йорк, Вашингтон. І саме цієї осені вирішується, що буде далі у цій війні. Разом з партнерами можемо посилити наші позиції, як потрібно для нашої перемоги. Спільної перемоги для дійсно справедливого миру. Україна представить в Сполучених Штатах план перемоги. Першим його побачить повністю президент Америки. Звичайно, представлю план перемоги усім лідерам країн-партнерів, які так само, як президент Байден, є лідерами світу, можуть стати лідерами миру, допомагаючи нам із планом перемоги. Представимо також його в Конгресі обом партіям, обом кандидатам в президенти Сполучених Штатів. Америка має всю достатню силу, щоб разом з Україною, разом з нашими союзниками та партнерами забезпечити те, чого ми прагнемо найбільше. Нам потрібен мир. І саме так, як передбачено формулою миру, саме так, як передбачено статутом ООН. Ми все для чого робимо: зброя для захисту нашої незалежності, наших людей, дипломатія для консолідації партнерів і примусу Росії до миру. Справедливість для того, щоб Росія відповідала за цю війну та відчувала її наслідки. І вдячність, наша вдячність всім, хто допомагає. Дякую кожному народу, усім лідерам, які відчули, що у цій війні Росії проти України вирішується значно більше, ніж доля тільки нашого українського народу. Дякую Сполученим Штатам, лідеру підтримки і кожній нації, яка проявила свою самостійність і власне лідерство, щоб допомогти нам захищати людей і не дозволити Росії розширити цю війну. Коли Україна захистить себе, кожна інша демократична нація від цього виграє. Саме зараз визначається, що буде спадщиною чинного покоління державних лідерів, тих, хто у найвищих кабінетах. Найближчими днями будуть зустрічі з лідерами країн глобального півдня, Сімки, Європи, з керівниками міжнародних організацій, з багатьма, хто допомагає консолідувати світ. Дуже вагомі зустрічі з представниками Сполучених Штатів, справжній мир та справжня перемога України та міжнародного права – ось що нам потрібно. Слава Україні!
And Haram
Oh, Hiram Slava.
And with that,
Also, since when did they put like the airline seats in the transport plane like that? I didn't know they had those in there.
oh yeah, they actually do. Like, I think there's some kind of a modular system that they have where you can pretty much just like clip them into the floor.
Huh, that's kind of interesting. I was looking at that, looking at the whole thing. I was like, did they really like have airline seats in the middle? I thought they just had the jump seats on the left and right sides.
One second, let me go see if I can find a picture of this. Because I think there are pictures of them just like clipping the seats in. Yeah, here we go. So this is a C-17 that is rigged up for an international flight right here, and they literally just have passenger seats. They're really big ones too that they just clip into the floor, and they just, you know, they're fixed in place.
Interesting. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool, actually. Like, the modularity of the floor system in most transport aircraft, it really is conducive to, like, put anything and everything you want in there. So you could convert them to carry certain kinds of cargo. You could put passengers in them and actually have seats clipped in, so that way they're actually, like, fixed onto the aircraft. It's pretty cool overall, but let me see if I can try and find... Here we go. Here's another picture of the C-17 with the passenger seat layout inside of it. It is possible.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. You know what's something that kind of like gets me a little pissed is that you pay so much money to fly economy even these days on most commercial airlines, and the seats are like little wooden boards with like no TVs in them. These seats are like the seats you would find in like first class on most planes, and you can just put as many of these as you want in there. Like, the Army ought to start putting out some flights. Well, not the Army, the Air Force ought to be putting out some flights from here to there and just rig up a C-17 like this. Because if you get these kinds of seats cheap, you know, because it's the Air Force, so, you know, they're probably like, you know, like maybe $100 for a ticket or $80 or something. Like, hell, I would go flying all over in a C-17 because the seats actually look comfy-ish. You know, like, it's not bad.
Yeah, they do look pretty comfy. That's also pretty interesting that Zelenskyy chose to take the Air Force plane instead of his own plane over here. I guess he thought it was safer.
Maybe so. Maybe he thought they wouldn't shoot down an American plane, so he ended up getting in the C-17 instead. Who knows? But still, pretty interesting little fact about that. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Once again, I got to tell y'all, folks, American tax dollars hard at work right here, because they get the first class seats in the C-17. You wouldn't think they do, but they do. It may as well be like flying first class on an actual normal airline. And also on top of that, like, domestic airline flights don't give you like food. They give you like pretzels or like a Biscoff cookie. So flying in a C-17 is literally like equivalent to any normal domestic flight at this point in first class. Not bad at all. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream, because now all the news is over. And we're going to be moving on into that little segment where we get to talk to all of y'all and answer some interesting questions. And make sure to stick around, because usually there is some very interesting questions that folks have asked and that we get to answer, and kind of interesting things we just get to talk about in between. And Matthew, I can feel a train segment cooking up. For some reason, I just know what's going to happen tonight. But with that, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, we have two more top donors to call off, and those are Dad Good, who put in a $50 donation, and also Steve Watkins at work, who threw in a $50 as well. And they helped to bring us up to $4,544 raised of the $3,000 goal. So very tremendous to see, and huge shout out to the entire LSA for making that goal possible, and even well beyond the goal. We might hit 5,000 before the night's out, which is tremendous to see once again. But with that, we're jumping into our live chat questions. We're fresh out of polls, and we're going to grab our Morse code decoders of the night. Tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. They said that the Morse code says those are rookie numbers, and you got to pump those numbers up. And long live the LSA, and the LSA will never die.
And that's the sound of money! And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And they do have to pump those numbers up, because 1,500 in a day, those are rookie numbers. But still, I got to congratulate y'all on getting that correct on the 942nd day. Y'all just keep getting it right every single time. And I got to say that that's actually really impressive. And I congratulate y'all for that. I really do. And so with that, we're about to be moving on to the next one. But I saw someone say C-47 had piano hinge, folding side seats, and that's an interesting point. You would bring up the old Dakota or the SkyTrain. These were in service for an insanely long time, and Matthew will know these. You've seen these before, Matthew, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I've seen these.
Man, these things are actually pretty cool. It's kind of like the military transport developed out of the DC-3. And let me see if I can show y'all here the DC-3, because the DC-3 was kind of like the first actual plane used in most airlines. It was a pretty good plane for the time. And let me see here if I can actually show y'all some of the old liveries for some of the famous airlines here in America. Let's see here. Where in the world would one be? Oh, come on. They've got to have it. Like, I know they've got to have it. Oh, dang. You've got to be kidding me. Hold up. I got to look for him, man, because I'm not giving up until we see it. Like a Delta Airlines DC-3 or something along those lines. And they don't have it. Like, this is stupid. Like, they should have these because these pictures are, like, the thing. Like, they're all over. So let me see here. Every U.S. airline, like America. Oh, wouldn't that be funny if we saw, like, here we go. An American Airlines DC-3. Look at that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool, man. Like, it's actually really cool to think that a lot of these airlines started off with, like, DC-3s for the large part. And let me see if I can find a picture of a United Airlines DC-3 here on their page. This page is nothing about modern. Okay, so TWA, it existed for a pretty good bit. Let me see if I can find. Here y'all go. Here's a TWA DC-3. Pretty cool, pretty neat. DC-3s, I actually think they're very interesting. And here we go. Let me go get y'all a Delta DC-3 because that was the one I was really wanting to show. So let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. Oh man. Dang, I can't find it. But one thing I did see, though, in a quick glance, is the Sky Club concourse at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Here at this airport, not only are you cruising from place to place, you're also cruising for a bruising, because Hartsfield, Atlanta is Brawlhalla and the Thunderdome of international airports. In my experience, I've never seen an airport that seems to be on the verge of violence like Atlanta. Like, none.
Man, like by far the most unfriendly airport in the country. I remember we've gone through actually several airports now. We've been to LAX, SeaTac in Seattle. We've been to Atlanta Hartsfield. We've been to the Birmingham airport. And I think London Heathrow, that's the other one. We've been to those airports. Out of all of them, Atlanta is a tough airport. Like, there are some decent people in there, but the majority of them are very unfriendly. TSA is super rude in Atlanta, and the people getting the bags off like airline stuff, they are crazy. Like, we nearly got in a fist fight with one when we came through that airport back from Britain one time. So I will say the friendliest airport out there, I think, was Seattle. Like,
Yeah.
Seattle had the friendliest people. The TSA was not screaming and yelling and acting like fools up there. They were acting normal. Like, I was shocked to see it. Birmingham is somewhat normal as well, but it's like a mid-sized international airport. It's not very large. LAX was all right, but Atlanta is by far rough.
Man, I'll tell you though, Birmingham was actually pretty chill. Like, you just went in there and like the security people were not like, they weren't like assholes. Like our first experience, to let y'all know, with TSA and flying was from Atlanta to London. So when we went into Atlanta, like, you got the TSA people, they're like, take off your shoes, take off your belt, take off your shirt, you know? And then you're like, so do I have to take off my socks? And then they just look at you, and then they're like, take off your shoes! And you're like, why do you have to be an asshole? Is this like what TSA is? And then here in Birmingham, which is the next time that we flew, that was not from Atlanta to Britain, like, you go in there, and I was like, so, like, do I have to take off my watch? And they're like, oh, no, you can keep your watch on. No, it's good. Like, you'll be fine if you keep your watch on. Your glasses, you can keep your glasses on, too. That'll be fine. And I was like, oh. I was like, they're, like, nice. I was like, I didn't even know TSA people could be nice. I thought, like all TSA people were assholes, but then I was like, okay, they're pretty chill. And then we went to LA, and we didn't really have to deal with anyone at LA because, you know, it's departures, so you were literally just like walk out of the airport pretty much at that point. And in Seattle, we had to deal with people, but they were nice up there too, because, like, I always try and kid around a little bit when I'm going through these things. And so you have to, like, show your ID and I think also your boarding pass to be able to get into the security checkpoint in the first place. So I did that, and I gave the guy my ID, and I said, do I look fatter in that picture? And he said, oh, man, he was, like, kidding around with me. He's like, nah, man, this looks like a high school picture. And, like, I was just kidding around with the guy. He was pretty chill, too. And then everyone else at the TSA checkpoint there was pretty chill. And I was like, well, I mean, I'd be damned. I guess like Atlanta's just like this violent, angry place as far as the airport goes. And Dallas was really chill too. Like Dallas was really calm as well, and it was a really big and busy airport. I mean, it was about as busy as Atlanta, and they were really nice there too. I was like shocked by that. I thought everyone was a douche in the TSA.
And they were so nice in Seattle. When I went through the TSA or whatever, and I went to that little like whole body X-ray scanner thing they have you stand in now, which is kind of odd. You come out the other end, and the guy was like, "Okay, step over here for just a second. Okay, are you ready?" I was like, "Am I ready?" I'm like, "What the hell do you mean I'm ready? What's about to happen in a minute?" He's like, "Oh, okay, we gotta pat you down like your back or something." I was like, okay." The dude said it like, "Are you ready?" I'm like, "What you mean? Like I'm about to get a smackdown or something like that?" It was crazy. Anywhere else, though, they just started grabbing on you and stuff. Like they don't even care. They start grabbing wherever they need to grab on you. It's like, damn. It's like they're just gonna rough you up in the airport like through TSA.
Yeah, man. But I was like, I actually like what's interesting, y'all. I noticed this back when we flew from Britain to Atlanta. For some reason, I was always put down as like a security risk or something, because I always got like this extra attention, like extra pat downs. You get like the little wand and crap. I don't even know why. Like I was like 16 or 17 or something when we were going over there, so I don't even know why that was happening, because it was happening to no one else in the family. But this time though, nothing happened. It was just like, oh, hey, go on through, you're good. And like they never patted me down or anything. I just went straight through, which was completely different from the last time. So I guess that somewhere out there, the feds that watch over us, they were like, he's alright. And they just went and gave me the go ahead to get through everywhere and everything. So I was like, oh,
And I
that's nice.
somehow already had TSA pre-check when we went on that one British trip or whatever, when they were patting you down every single time. I had like TSA pre-check, and I never applied for it or anything. I just automatically had it. And I have no idea to this day how I had it. And I don't know where it went either. It disappeared after that. But it was weird. It was just like they just gave it to me for a minute to let me see what it was like, and then it went away.
Yeah, that's weird. And also, Miss Disa said, I like trains. It's much easier to board. I do too. Like, trains are insanely easy to board. It's literally like a thoughtless process. Like, with getting in a plane and like going through an airport, you always have to go through like the TSA checkpoint. It's like a whole rigmarole. And then with the train, you literally just walk onto it. There's like no security checkpoint at all. It's like flying used to be before 9/11. Like, there was really no like security or anything. You just got like on the plane and went and took off. And that's what I like about trains. Like that side of things is that just getting on the train, it's so much easier than getting on a plane. Like, I don't know, Matthew might have a different point on that, because like, although I will say this, Matthew, I think that you can't give the train that bad of a rap, because we now clearly know that you didn't get like motion sick on the train. You just legitimately got sick while on the train. So I feel like the train, like, I feel like you kind of have to give the train like a second go around, because I don't think you were getting motion sick at all going to sleep. I think you literally just got sick from whatever was going around. And so it seemed like that.
I still wouldn't sleep on that top bunk again. It was too small. I'm too large for that. And if I take another train again, it'll be like a commuter train or something to like get from A to B, like maybe an hour or two. I'll probably never do an overnight train again. Like I just don't want to do that. Like waking up on a train is like one of those bad feelings. Like, geez, like I wish I was not on this train right now. Like when you wake up like that, I would much rather just like get on the train, go to where I'm going, like rent a car and look around that way. I'd much rather do it that way, actually.
I'm just saying. I'm look. Here's my honest opinion. I just really enjoyed the train. The food was good. The scenery was nice. It was enjoyable having like a little private room. I really liked all that. Some people are like, "Oh, hush you." I saw someone say that they're like, it takes like 3 times longer. Yes, it does. Actually, it takes a lot longer than 3 times longer, because like a flight from LA to Seattle is like probably like 2 hours. The train takes like 36, so it's like 10 times the length. But it's so much more enjoyable. It's almost like a vacation in itself. And it's very relaxed and very laid back. Mandy and me kind of had different experiences with the train though, because we went about things kind of like a different way. But I still had a great time on it. I was enjoying it greatly. I loved it. Honestly, that trip like reinforced in my mind, like trains are in the future. Like as far as me getting on more trains and riding them around, I really loved it. It was great. Like every single bit of it. I couldn't really think of a single thing to complain about. The only thing I could think to complain about at all was that the coffee percolator in our super coach ended up, well, actually, man, what in the hell those things are called? It's not a super coach. let's see, there's the Viewliners.
Superliner.
Superliner, yeah, that's it. The Superliner. I don't know why I called it Supercoach, but the only thing that I could complain about is that the percolator broke down in our Superliner, and so we had to go to the next one to get coffee. But beyond that, it was great. I really enjoyed it. And so
I've got some graphic details about the train, which are a little bit, not so like palatable to hear. That could probably explain why I didn't like the train very much. But I don't think anybody wants to hear that. It's kind of like some sanitary things on the train, which are not that great. That I probably would not want to. If I knew about it ahead of time, I probably would not have taken the train, to be honest.
What do you mean? Like, I don't even think I know what you mean.
Well, the smell. Like, yeah, I don't think you knew about it because you weren't right next to the bathroom. But during the night, there were times where the bathroom was not being fully contained, if you know what I mean, and you could really, really feel the assault in your nostrils, really, really badly.
All right. In defense of that, though, the whale was on, so like, like that was like a once in like a ordeal kind of a thing. Maybe I should tell you all that story because this is a hell of a story. So we're all asleep, right? Like we're it's the middle of the night, trains entering like the San Jose, Oakland area, still going on along, picks up some idiot in San Jose, and I'm woken up in the middle of the night. Like, I'm sleeping like a rock. I don't even know what's going on when I wake up to this. But I hear this coming up the stairs to the top level of the Superliner. Don't they know I'm handicapped? Why in the world am I coming up here? What's going on? And I'm like, I'm about to get out that room and just be like, shut the hell up, because I'm like in the middle of sleeping. And I was like, who in the hell, what kind of an idiot gets on a train at midnight, knowing everyone's sleeping on this thing, and starts screaming and yelling? So we find out the next day that it's this, like, I can't, like, I absolutely loathed this person. I never had to deal with him, but I had to listen to him a lot. Ended up nicknaming him the Whale because they were so, like, they were large to a point that it was like physically impossible for them to actually move around the train, like through the corridors and stuff. And they complained about everything. Like, I wouldn't have been really like cruel about nicknaming them if it wasn't for them bitching to the coach attendant about every little thing. Like, they would call the coach attendant to have them come down so that way they could complain about the headache they're having, knowing that the attendant can't do anything to help them at all. And they're just saying it to say it. It's like, why the hell would you be complaining to them about this stuff? Like, they complained about everything. They were getting on the phone with their family and they're like, oh, I have to take the train and I have to go down to the dining car to eat. It's like, you should like that. It's like, you clearly like eating. Why in the world are you complaining about going down to the dining car? And it was like that the whole time they were there. Like, and also on top of that, they were complaining about going up and down the stairs, and they're like that stupid kind of a brain dead, if y'all know what I mean, to where they would climb up and down the stairs voluntarily, but complaining about it the whole time. It's like, you don't have to go up and down the stairs, you could just stay up on the top level, and not go up and down the stairs. But then they would complain about it the whole time. And it's like, why? It's like it was stupid.
Oh, man, when they did that screaming during the night, like when they came on that train in the middle of the night, like screaming about like how they're unhappy or something, I was already feeling a little bit sick at that point. And I was getting sort of foul, like really. I was honestly getting foul because I was so sick. And I heard them screaming. I was like, I was 10 seconds away from yelling out through the door, shut up, like literally as loud as I could through the door. But she quietened down before I was able to say anything about it. And then she went to like wherever she was going. But worse than that, though, another thing, since we're on the train, the negative side of the train, the smell was a little bit rough. And I think it was because I was near the bathroom, the room was. But also, when I woke up in the morning, I was like, I got to get out of this roomette thing here because like it's making me sick. And also, I need some space and some air. So I walked all the way down at like 4 a.m. in the morning to the observation car to go down there and get some air, fresh air, I was hoping for. I walked in there. First of all, I walked to the dining car and the lights are all out. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then I'll start hearing voices around me and people's heads lifting off the like dining car like tables. And they said, good morning, like all in unison. I was like, oh my God, there's people all up in here. It was all the staff there like sleeping in the dining car. I was like, I was like, hello. So I took my sick self up to the observation car. I walked in there and it felt like I was on the streets of LA or something like that. There was Jack Daniel bottles laying on the floor everywhere. There was people from Coach like laying and sleeping all over the floor. They were sleeping in the chairs. And I mean, these people look kind of rough. I'm not gonna lie, like, they looked really rough. Like, I'm not trying to be like judgmental or nothing, but I'm serious. They're like, they look pretty rough. And I went and sat down in there. I was like, what the hell is going on in here? I was like, where did these people even come from? So I'm sitting there, and while I'm sitting there, some dude tries to sneak back into the sleeper car while I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there watching this like in a like sick stupor, thinking, what? Did this guy really just try to sneak back there? So the conductor comes running by, like yelling, so I'm like, get back in here, get back in here. I was like, damn, it's like the prison car at 4 a.m. in the morning. So then some dude starts getting in like a fight over here on the right, like starts getting loud with some other guy over here. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing over here? So was there about to be a stabbing, like right in the middle of the observation car? I'm just sitting there sick the whole time thinking, what the hell is going on in here at 4 a.m. in the morning? And then they were cleared out of there, like at like 7 a.m. in the morning. They were totally cleared out. It was crazy.
It was a little interesting. Like the coach class thing, just to let y'all know, the coach class tickets on a train like that are really cheap. Like you can actually go all the way from LA to Seattle in coach for like $120. So it beats flying every day of the week. It's so much cheaper and easier to do. So you end up having people who may actually be on a no-fly list riding in coach on the train. So that is something that is like a little interesting about the whole coach class side of things. You don't deal with it though in first class, like with the sleepers and the bedrooms and stuff like that. That doesn't happen, and they also don't allow coach class people to go to that part of the train. So it's like pretty much completely separate. But still, that was something I did note a little bit. Like that, I was like, huh, that's a little interesting. And also, I gotta ask, man, you go up in the chat because I added someone who said something a little interesting. What is up with you? The specific person I'm talking to with that statement, because if you're going to try and strawman this thing to be offended, you can go. Like, I'm not going to be missing you, to be entirely honest, because you sat there and just took everything I said out of context because I'm talking about this insufferable asshole. You're going to sit there and say that they're a fat mental patient. If they were, I don't think they could afford first class on the train. And also, I don't think they would have been as competent as they were to be able to complain and whine and bitch about literally everything. So
how people get so offended about everything? I went up and read it to like get caught up on the whole thing. I don't even see how that guy like literally like inserted himself in something. It's like we weren't even talking about you, buddy. But he inserted himself in the whole thing. It's like we were talking about clearly one individual person, and he like made it a generalization.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I think that one right there. Let me see here. Where in the world are they? I think that one's stupid enough they're going to have to go because that one was just dumb. Like that's one thing I'm not going to play stupid games with, is saying something quite clearly and then someone gets offended because they came up with something completely different than what I said. I'm talking about some annoying asshole on the train. If you're going to go and make a fake story about it, you can go and make fake stories elsewhere. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that, well, at least the whole train story side of things, not that stupid thing. Maybe it's VJ Spectrum said, maybe it was the whale. Maybe it was. Like, maybe that was the whale. I don't know. But yeah, that, like...
What if it was that person on the train? What if that is the person? You're like, damn, they're talking about me.
Yeah. What if it was? But, like, that's... let me say this really quickly, y'all, because we have rules of civility that we have on this channel. I largely expect people to kind of follow that in real life as well. I got standards for that kind of stuff. And someone ought to have enough sense that when they get on a train at midnight and everyone in the train is sleeping, don't be screaming as you go up the stairs. It's incredibly rude to everyone, and then they have a right to be pissed off at you. It's like you can't be an idiot and then act like everyone's going to be fine with you and tolerate you, because I'm not. Like, if you're an idiot, I'm going to say you're an idiot, and that person really was pissing me off the whole time, because then their room was right down from ours. Like, it was literally just the next room up the car, so they would be calling the attendant endlessly. So you'd hear that little bling thing that goes off on the train on that car every time they called him, and then the attendant would come down and they'd be like, yeah, what do you need? She'd be like, oh, I have a headache, and I have to walk to the dining car, and that's horrendous, and I feel so dehydrated, and I just don't like it here, it's not going to do me well. And the attendant was such a nice guy, and he was like, well, I mean, that's just kind of a little tough. Is there anything I can help you with? And it was like, it just endlessly went on. And then they were also that kind of an asshole, knowing, like, they would leave the door open to their coach, well, like their roomette, and they got on their phone and they would listen to like YouTube videos and stuff at full volume, knowing that there's like people around them and stuff, and there's a certain kind of an etiquette that you're supposed to follow there with like not making too much noise because you could be bothering other people. And then they just like had their phone on full blast, like watching a sports game or something. I was so annoyed with that person. I was like, this is the absolute opposite of what you're supposed to be on a train. This is like the most insufferable person imaginable. And that's why like for the rareness of it, like I never give like mean nicknames to anyone, but that's why that person was called the Whale. And also on like, also another thing I gotta say, one more thing about it, it's like if you sit there and you get on a train, right, and you booked a roomette on the second floor, why are you complaining about don't they know I'm handicapped? Because isn't that your job to know your handicap and pick the handicap accessible room on the bottom of the car that was literally available? Like, we walked past it getting on the train. There is one room at the bottom of every single sleeper on that train that is handicap accessible. It's made for people who are handicapped. So if you're going to claim your handicap, why wouldn't you reserve the ticket for the handicap rooms that were available instead of getting a roomette and then complaining about it? That just seems like making your own problem and then complaining about it. That makes no sense. Just, you know, deal with it if you're the one stupid enough to not pick the handicap accessible room, because Amtrak has it on their website. They go, what room do you want? Do you want a roomette, a bedroom, or a handicap accessible bedroom? There's literally 3 options. If you don't pick the giant third glaring option and you're supposedly handicapped, it's like, that's your problem. Like, you can't complain about that at that point. And also, Melanie said, how expensive is the accessible room? I think it's actually, if I remember right, it was either the same price as a bedroom or a little less expensive. It was almost like the midway point, I think, in between a roomette and a bedroom, or something along those lines. So it wasn't that bad, because like the upgrade from a roomette to a bedroom, like, they're both fairly pricey, but it's not like a massive difference. It's like a 10%, 15% up hike in price. So it wasn't that much. And if that's such an important thing to you, to have an like a handicap accessible room, paying like an additional, like, for the amount of time they were on the train, like an extra $60 for that room, it's like, then, you know, that should be it. Like, you shouldn't be screaming about it because you made the choice to get the roomette instead of the handicap accessible bedroom. So it's like, why are you screaming about this at midnight? That makes no sense, at least to me.
It's just crazy to me to see, like, across the board, like, how generally, like, I don't know if it's like testy or something. The like general society has gotten very like narcissistic or testy or something like that. Because we even saw like a guy in the airport who apparently showed up at the airport late on his own volition, and he came in and started like cussing out the boarding attendants, like at the American Airlines thing. They started cussing them out, talking about, "Oh God, y'all made me lose my money," going crazy like behind us. He was like talking to himself, like cussing, like to himself, like in the line, like right behind us.
Let's go, man. Come on, please.
I just turned around and looked at him like, "What the hell are you like having a meltdown, dude, or something?" It's like, chill out. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and I was like, this dude's like losing it, and he's the one that showed up late, and he's blaming everybody else. I couldn't do that. I don't understand like how that mindset works. I'm like, if you showed up late, dude, and you missed a flight, it's your money. You lost it. It's like, that's on you. It's like, why are you cussing out the people that are working here at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to make a living? It's like, they can't help that you're late.
And they said, like the guy said, you missed the flight, man. He's like, that's not an option. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, let me just go and call American Airlines. Let me call the CEO and tell him to turn that plane around. Like it's like, what in the world? Like, I don't get that. Like, you are an adult. You're responsible for what you're doing. And that plane leaves at 8 in the morning. Be there at 6. Don't show up at 7:30 and expect the whole world to revolve around you. Then you're just like you know, I throw this word around a good bit, but I feel like it's well deserved. That's just being an asshole, and then acting like that's everyone else's fault. That is like a level of an entitlement I cannot understand. Because if I knew that I could not miss a flight at 8 for some reason, I would be there at 6. I'm not going to be the schmuck that shows up at 7:30 and then blames the world for my own laziness and incompetence. That's just stupid. Like, that is really stupid. And that guy was like the most animated guy as well, because he was behind us the whole time, and the whole time we're in line, he's like, come on, hurry up, let's go, everyone, come on, let's go, scan the back, hurry up. And he's just saying this stuff like it's actually going to do anything. Like, this guy was clearly like an immature man-child, but, you know, like...
If I was a troll, I would have turned around and been like, Giddy up number 4. He's running fast. He's running faster than the other horse. Oh, yes, giddy up number 5. Oh, he's catching up. Oh, dear, he's catching up. Oh, that's not an option. Oh, dear, it's not an option. That's terrible, terrible day for him. Oh, dear. Get your hands off my wieners.
Dude, you know what we should have done is that we should have gathered up like those little paper airline tickets that we got given in the Amtrak tickets and held them in our hand like they were betting slips and acted like it was a horse race and been like, come on, Golden Starlight, come on! You know, like to start doing that with the guy. Like, dude, that would have... he would like this guy though was probably so detached from like reality, like with the way he acted, he probably wouldn't have even realized how stupid he looked because we would have been imitating the guy. He wouldn't have probably even realized that at all. Like that's the crazy thing about it, really. And also, someone said sorry, but a lot of U.S. tourists are that type. They give a bad name to a lot of people. They really do. A lot of tourists are like that, really, from every country. But you know, being an American and knowing our specific kind of dumb tourists, they can really make a bad name for really everyone else.
I generally thought that everybody was generally, surprisingly, to my shock, that everybody was pretty orderly for the most part. In the airport, people were acting decently okay, but there were like a handful of lunatics, like that guy, the woman on the train, and they were pretty much everywhere. And also, one thing I noticed, I didn't really realize this until I've taken some more flights, which we actually took a total of like 4 flights between connecting flights and the main flight out to wherever we were going. There's always a screaming kid in economy every single time. And they're always either one seat in front or one seat behind of us every single time. I don't know if that was just like luck or if that's just like the way it works or what. But the screaming kid was always in there. I just dealt with it. Like I was like, okay, it's just a screaming kid, whatever. I didn't have any headphones or anything to put on. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit here the whole time and deal with a screaming kid. And then when the turbulence hit, the kid would start screaming like horribly, like just going berserk.
Yeah.
And then also on the landing too, like when your ears were popping, that one kid was back there on that last flight, like screaming, "Oh, my ears are bleeding!" I was like, chill out. I was like, this dude's going to make my ears bleed in a minute from all that screaming. Oh my God, man! But the screaming kids are a doozy, though. Those are a doozy. I get it; people have to take their kids places, but geez, like, can you give them like a pacifier or something, like to calm them down?
I don't know, man. Like I wish they would because it was grinding on my nerves too. I was like, dang. It's like, does this ever end? Like, does it ever stop? Is there one flight where there isn't a baby that's screaming on it? And because like they're quiet literally until you get to the runway. Like as soon as the plane moves on the runway, there's like an IFR or FLIR or something near the runways that lets the planes know where they're supposed to land. There's like one for the babies because as soon as they get on the runway, they're like. It's like, no, it's like, and then they're like that for the whole flight up until it lands. And then as soon as the wheels touch down on the runway at the next airport, they stop. Like they have this innate knowledge of like when the plane's about to take off and when it's all over. Like, and I don't even know how because they're not even like old enough to talk yet, but they're old enough to actually like figure that out. I don't know, but that was something.
But I know what the kid was screaming about though. Is I went deaf because I got sick and I got slightly congested. And on that flight back, when we were like coming down from 30,000 feet, I went completely deaf, and I was deaf for like a whole day after I came back and couldn't hardly hear anything. Like I was like having to ask people, "Huh?" Like they would say it like right in front of my face. And I was having to go, "Huh?" Like right in front of my face. It was bad. Like I think it was directly because of getting sick. Because that didn't happen in the first couple of flights. But then I got sick, and then all of a sudden I went deaf. So that wasn't any fun at all, and it really actually was quite painful.
You know, and I see someone talking about there used to be consequences for treating people like crap. There used to be, and I would have to be honest. I think the whole thing where the consequences disappeared, like if there was a time where we could say that happened, and this isn't like the fault of this specific group, I'm just bringing it up because it's been like this since then, it was the boomers. Like the boomers were like the first ones where the idea the customer is always right became a thing, and the customer isn't always right. The customer is usually half the time wrong, you know, and it's like, and also the kind of entitlement that comes with this idea of expecting that no matter how you act, you should be treated like royalty wherever you go. It's ridiculous to me. Like I feel like you know, it's like these people that you're dealing with at these businesses, at these jobs, like getting on a plane, getting off a plane, they are other people just like you. And if you would like to be treated well, you should be treating other people well. It's not a one-way street with that. And I feel like companies nowadays should start to enforce that a little bit more. So if you end up dealing with someone that sits there like the whale did, stupid and you complain about everything on the train endlessly for like no end with no reasoning, and you're completely disrespectful to other people, they ought to just throw you off the train. And they ought to just say, all right, you're getting off here. You know, you can get the rest of your fare refunded for the ticket that you didn't really get to use, but you're off. You're not coming back. Like American Airlines, like if someone gets on the plane, they're really rude. I'm not talking about like the crying babies or anything, because, you know, that is what it is. You just kind of deal with that. But with people who are like crazy on the planes or anything like that, someone should come up and before the plane even takes off, be like, you're going to have to go. That just should be how it works. Or put them on a list where it's like they cannot get a ticket with this airline again. Because people will learn. Like, they either will end up being civil, or they will end up not flying, or they won't take the train, or they won't be able to go and buy groceries because they're going to be refused service. That's like, there has to be some kind of consequences for poor behavior. Like, you can't just tell people be nice and leave it at that. You have to say be nice, and then there kind of has to be the concept of there will be consequences if you're not nice. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an idea. I don't know if I would say like don't let them go to the grocery store or anything like that over that, but I think airlines already can like ban people from it if they're causing an issue. But generally, that's only over like really big issues. Like, for example, if they have to deplane the aircraft or something because somebody got in a fight, or if they have to like redivert the flight somewhere else because they were like acting wild in the air. But it's not over like minorly rude behavior. Like if they get loud with a flight attendant, they pretty much let that go. I also noticed the flight attendants have become a lot more, it's not unfriendly, it's just kind of like neutral, like not really friendly or unfriendly. They're just kind of like right down the middle. I kind of know why they're like that, because they're having to deal with a lot of crappy people on a daily basis, which would get quite old quickly, I'd imagine. But it just seemed like the flight attendants reflected like the bad passengers, some of the bad ones that get on board.
Yeah, also I see some people saying, no, boomers didn't do that. No, I'm not saying like the boomers are like the ones who like really did it. I'm just saying it kind of like started then, and it's gotten to where it's really grown since that point. Y'all know what I mean? Like nowadays, like with the boomers, the whole customer is always right thing was just like happening. Like that just started to come into being. But nowadays, like people still try and push that like in the corporate way they do, but people really take that literally. Like people act like they can truly be idiots everywhere and just get away with it because no one's going to do anything to them and they're entitled to be an idiot. And it's like that's just, I just don't like that. And like there's not a lot of people doing it. Like it's a really small number because, you know, Matthew, we can only think of one guy at the airport in Seattle, and we can only think of the one whale on the train. And those are like the only two people on the whole trip, but they stick out like sore thumbs because they're just that bad. Like they're that noticeable. And it's like people like that, there's got to be some sort of a consequence for this stupid erratic behavior. Like, you know, like they can't fly or, you know, something like that. Like I'm not saying not fly permanently. It's just that, you know, you're not getting served today. You can come back tomorrow and fly when you're a reasonable human being, or you know, like we're not going to clear your order here at the supermarket. You can come back tomorrow when you act reasonable, but we're not going to serve you acting like a clown. Like that ought to be the way things work to me. Because people would start acting right, and people are going to say that wouldn't work. It does work, because I used to be a server at a restaurant here in Birmingham, and it was called The Club, and it was some kind of like a dinner club thing up on a hill overlooking downtown Birmingham. And when I was there, they had that rule. Like the servers had to be extra nice to the people there, but the people there who ate there had to be super nice to the servers. And if you were rude to a server, the server could go up to a manager and be like, that person was extremely rude to me. And that manager would go over there, clear out their order, and literally kick them out. They would revoke memberships over being rude to servers. And every single person that ever went and ate at that restaurant was so nice to every single server. I remember only one rude person, and they got kicked out. And so it's like you're either a civil person and you're civil to people all the time, no matter if they're your server or they're, you know, working for you, or, you know, you're working for them, all that stuff. You're nice to them, or there are consequences. And like that is just how things have to be enforced. There are benefits to doing the right thing. There are not benefits about doing the wrong thing. And to keep things socially correct, there has to be some sort of a consequence for really foul behavior. That would be my opinion.
Interesting. Very interesting. I just realized we're running super late.
Yeah, we are. So with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to Christopher Russell, who says, have the Russians kept up the maintenance on their existing nuclear missiles?
I would assume not. Their budget is so low, there's just really no way they could do that and also maintain their conventional force. So I would largely assume a lot of their nuclear weapons are probably derelict at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to M. McKernan, who says, are prisoners, POWs, counted as casualties? And how many POWs do Ukraine and Russia hold?
From what I understand, the POWs aren't counted as casualties on either side for some reason. You would think they would be because it's a loss of manpower. They might still be alive, but still a loss. But we don't really know how many prisoners either side has either. Those numbers have never really been publicly heard, and usually sometimes it's inflated on both sides to make it sound a little bit better. So honestly, we don't know how many prisoners they are, and just to make sure that it's even more ambiguous, kind of like the problem I'm dealing with here answering the question, they're not really included as casualties on either side. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is AF Kaplan, who says, any indication of sabotage regarding the blown-up Russian ICBM?
No, we think that was actually just complete manufacturing or operational incompetence. We think that's what it probably was, because there's really no other way to explain it, because it couldn't have been because of sabotage. Those nuclear weapons, unlike most weapons in Russia, are actually guarded fairly well, because nuclear weapons and nuclear weapon technology, like the missiles, has to have a pretty constant eye on it. Otherwise, people are going to be coming around and sabotaging everything everywhere. So we understand that it was probably an untampered with, an unadulterated missile, best way to put that. And it was probably in perfect running order, and it just ended up having some sort of a critical flaw, or ended up having a catastrophic explosion because of some sort of an incompetence along the way of producing it or operating it, one or the other. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching, and so much once again for supporting this fundraiser tonight. It has been an absolutely incredible one. We have raised $4,568 on this fundraiser. We were only $1 above being able to say that we raised $4,567, which would have been 4,567, which would have been really cool to see, but it still is great to know. A little dollar above that, still great. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. I hope y'all have a great night tonight, and we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. The Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, once again, a big thanks for another fantastic Sunday night fundraiser stream where we raised $4,568 of the $3,000 goal. Tremendous to see once again, and huge shout out to all of you in the LSA for making that possible once again on another Sunday. We don't know what the exact total is. It's hovering somewhere around 1.4 million or so total raised. Oh my God, Joshua Times just threw in a $500 donation as we speak. That brought us over $5,000. Jaga jaga. I'll tell you what, Joshua Times came in clutch right there at the end and brought us over 5,000. That's crazy to see. And thank you, Joshua, for letting me have a lot of thunder there on the way out because of that massive donation. And with that, we'll see you all at 10 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday night for the next night of war news on the stream, and also maybe midday tomorrow as well for a short war summary. But with that, thank you all once again, get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Futures unfold, the white and gold live розпалиш,